We'll get started in just 1 second. We think we're ready to go. Okay, with that, we're going to get started. We're calling the meeting to order at 9:04 a.m. And with that, Executive Director Ross, will you please take the roll?
President Haley,
Here.
Vice President Hagerman,
Here.
Superintendent Horn,
Here.
Member Katniss will be with us shortly. Dr. Clay,
Here.
Member Kravikis will be with us shortly. Member Haney,
Here.
Dr. Cruz Rivera,
Here.
President Haley, you have a quorum.
Fantastic. Just as a reminder, during the course of our meeting, please, when we're getting ready to vote on items, please unmute and turn your cameras on while we vote. And with that, just looking ahead, it's the middle of summer, but some of our kids have already been back in school, I think, for close to 5 or 6 weeks. I just wanted to use this time to say we wish you students an incredible fall and great 2026-2027 school year. We want to wish our educators and administrators a great year as well. Just a couple of the items that will be on today's agenda that I wanted to highlight. One, I'm really excited about the work we're going to be doing with on teacher prep programs, just making sure that that process is going to be clear, what our expectations are of educator prep programs. So I'm looking forward to the WestEd presentation. I want to congratulate the Department of Education on the award that they received from the U.S. Department of Education. This is a $100,000 grant. I'm curious, of course, like how that's going to relate to our Perkins grant. We're also spending some time today approving some new industry-related credentials. I would really, as I said last year and in 2024, I know we get input from industry. I would like to see that process updated where it's actually aligned with like real job related credentialing. So I'm hopeful that Talent Opportunity Challenge grant hopefully we'll win the final. That would be really fantastic. But I'm hopeful that that can help inform the direction that we go, particularly around technical education credentials. I'm also really pleased with the progress that Antelope Union has taken. That was a really great update. And finally, I'm really grateful for the ATAC, AATAC, and just the work that they have done around the A through F letter grades. We have been in the midst of this process since 2024 when we were taking steps to get back to really following the law where we were going to provide the individual letter grades for the components that make up our letter grade. We realized that we could not move forward with that. And I am very grateful that so many different players and stakeholders have listened to our study sessions, and the ATAC and AATAC have taken the appropriate steps forward to make recommendations. We have a lot of work ahead of us over these next couple of months, but it has been, for many of us on the board, particularly those that have been on since 2022, clarity around proficiency and growth has been a priority for us. And so I'm looking forward to today's meeting, our retreat tomorrow, and what's ahead for the rest of the fall. So with that, that ends my president's report. I would like to yield to our superintendent.
In the interest of time, I have no report.
Okay, well, with that, Executive Director Ross, the best part of the meeting.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. This is indeed the best part of the meeting, and I'm super excited to have two amazing kids with us today that we get to honor and recognize. It's just a real joy. And we have both of these students traveled quite a way to be with us. And so we're really thankful for that as well, that they could be here in person. So up first is going to be Callie Gilbert. Callie's an 8th grade student at Sarita Middle School in Pima County. She's nominated by her principal, Stephanie Silman. Callie is the student body vice president for 7th grade, is an active student representative and school site council, is a strong leader, always shows a positive attitude, has excellent academic performance, is engaged with school and community events, and makes a positive impact on her peers and school community. Callie, you want to come on up?
Hi, my name is Callie Gilbert, and I'm an 8th grader at Sarita Middle School. As I enter my 3rd year at SMS, I can confidently say my favorite thing about my school is how it feels like home. Over the past 2 years, I have made so many connections with staff and fellow students, and I'm beyond grateful for the experience I've had at SMS. Over the years, I have had many accomplishments that range in sizes big to small, but my recent ones, such as being chosen as one of AZ-19 region's most influential youth or being elected student council president, couldn't have been done without Miss Amy Fisk, my 6th grade English teacher. I promise I would not be giving this speech if it wasn't for her. She was the first person to tell me that I was a leader and that I should join the student council which she was running at the time. I listened to her and ended up sending in an application. I was accepted and I originally joined as a representative. Then I heard that elections to become an officer were happening and I decided to run for vice president. I was elected and then ran again at the end of my 7th grade year for president. I was elected and am currently president. I truly believe if you want the younger generations to succeed, we need more teachers like Miss Fisk, who can unlock students' full potential. Miss Fisk isn't the only great teacher at SMS. There's tons. What has helped me grow as a student has been the environment. Every day, I'm surrounded by teachers who genuinely care about my education and want to help me grow. Some examples would be Miss Bjork, my orchestra teacher, who kept my love for the cello going strong even when things got difficult or I wanted to quit. There's also Mr. Lopez, my 7th grade CTE teacher. CTE was a difficult class for me and I struggled a lot, but he never failed to help me or put a smile on my face when I needed it. I could talk forever about the great teachers at my school, and that just shows how amazing the environment is. I plan on getting a scholarship, whether it's through sports or academics. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I do know if I keep getting this guidance from my teachers, family, and friends, I'll be headed in the right direction. Thank you for your time.
All right. So up next, we have another amazing student from across our state. Kaylee Gladish is a 12th grade student at Aspire High School in Yavapai County. She was nominated by Superintendent Dr. Kelly Burns, demonstrates resilience, determination, and kindness in all aspects of her life, is known for her positive attitude, work ethic, and smile, contributes to positive school culture, perseveres, is a role model, and an excellent example of character to school staff and peers. Kaylee?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaylee Gladish. I'm a junior at Aspire Accommodation High School. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be here today. First, I want to thank my principal, Dr. Burns, for nominating me for this recognition. It means a lot to know that someone at my school sees my hard work and believes in me. I also want to thank my friends and family for pushing me, supporting me, and reminding me to keep going even when things get difficult. I truly wouldn't be where I am today without them. One of my favorite things about my school is how understanding and respectful my teachers are. They make me feel heard, supported, and they have helped me realize that asking for help or taking things at my own pace doesn't mean I'm not capable. One of my biggest accomplishments has been growing confidence in myself. I've learned that I've learned that I'm capable of more than I sometimes give myself credit for. I've finally realized that if I put my mind to something and work hard, I can accomplish it. As I continue through my junior and senior years, I want to keep growing, learning, and becoming the best version of myself. After high school, I hope to continue pursuing my goals and build a future I could be proud of. Thank you again for this recognition and giving me the opportunity to speak today.
President Haley, that concludes the executive director's report for today.
Fantastic. Well, excellent with our students that were here, and we're really grateful that they would take the time to travel all this way to let us hear from them and learn from them. Our next item is we're now moving to item 2, the call to the public. This is a time for the public to comment on items listed in the consent agenda or the general session. Members of the public may also address topics not on today's agenda. Please note that Arizona law prohibits board members from discussing or taking legal action on matters raised during the call to the public that are not currently on today's meeting agenda. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board during our 1-hour public comment period. Furthermore, speakers are not allowed to cede their time to another speaker. Personal attacks, of course, are not appropriate. With that, Deputy Director DePlanty, have we received any requests to speak?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, yes, we have. First up will be John Huppenthal, followed by Kevin Rolfe, followed by Silverio Garcia. John? Apparently he's not here. So is Kevin here? Kevin Rolfe?
Oh, thanks, Sean. Good to see you. Good morning once again. My name is Kevin Rolfe. I'm president of the Arizona Science Teachers Association, and I am here speaking on behalf of the over 1,200 educators that ASTA represents throughout our state. ASTA is asking the board to reconsider the proposed grade 5 and grade 8 science assessment requirements. Our concern is that the proposed assessment structure does not reflect the way Arizona science standards are designed. Arizona standards are not isolated by grade. They are organized as learning progressions, intentionally building scientific understanding from kindergarten through high school. Our current AZ Sci reflects that structure. Grade 5 assesses grades 3 through 5, and grade 8 assesses grades 6 through 8. The proposed system would instead assess only standards assigned specifically to grades 5 and grade 8. This creates a fundamental mismatch between what we expect students to learn, what we expect teachers to teach, and what we measure appropriately. At the middle school level, grade 8 students would be assessed only on 12 out of the 38 standards in grades 6 through 8, approximately 32%. 5 of the 10 science clusters would not even be assessed. This is not a comprehensive measure of a student's science learning. ASTA believes that our assessment system should reflect the structure of our standards, we recommend either maintaining grade band assessments with meaningful cluster level reporting or assessing science annually in grades 3 through 8. Our students deserve an assessment system that measures the science they're actually expected to learn. Thank you for your time.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Silverio Garcia Jr., followed by Sarah Torres, followed by Hans van der Mars. Silverio? Not here. Sarah Torres, online. Go ahead, Sarah.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Torres, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Arizona Science Teachers Association. If you flown through Sky Harbor this summer, you may have seen the walls promoting Phoenix is bioscience. Phoenix is sustainable. Phoenix is manufacturing. Arizona is clearly investing in a STEM-driven economy, but we cannot build that workforce without a strong K-12 science foundation. Arizona's science standards were intentionally designed as learning progressions. Yet the proposed assessments will measure only grades 5 standards and grade 8 standards, not the full progression. Consider the core idea Life Science 1, cells and the structures and processes of organisms, foundational learning from microbiology and Arizona's bioscience industry. That core idea, Life Science 1, would not be assessed on the proposed grade 5 or grade 8 assessments. And while this core idea, Life Science 1 content may appear on ACT Science, a national college readiness assessment, it is not an assessment designed to measure mastery of the Arizona science standards. So where in Arizona's statewide assessment system will we know whether students have actually mastered this Arizona core idea and the standards connected to it? That is the larger concern. If significant core ideas are not measured in grades 5 or 8, and high school relies on a national college readiness assessment, where will Arizona measure mastery of the full progression of its adopted science standards? What we assess influences what we teach. ASTA asks you to reconsider, retain grade band assessments, or assess annually in grades 3 through 8. If Arizona wants to grow its own STEM workforce, we must ensure that the science that builds that workforce is taught, learned, and measured. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Last up is Hans van der Mars.
We're good. You're good.
Good. I thought I had a gym voice, but I'd like to address to you today, although it might be a done deal, the planned elimination of all bonus points within the Arizona A through F School Accountability Initiative. I fail to see the plan's logic for two reasons. First, eliminating bonus points again narrows the curriculum by homing in on just the 3 R's. What message does this send to students, parents, and the public at large? It says that the only thing that really matters is developing what happens between the ears of the students. Their health, physical fitness, creativity, and overall well-being does not matter. It is not important. Second, this 3 R's first plan, sans bonus points, seemingly represents another attempt at school reform that flies in the face of overwhelming evidence that narrowing the curriculum plus annual statewide testing does not work. The academic performance needle has not budged. So why keep moving the deck chairs as they did on the Titanic? Schools value access to earning bonus points for incorporating such so-called non-core subjects. It might surprise you that many students, especially those in economically disadvantaged areas, stay in school primarily because of subjects like music, art, physical education. They are precisely the incentives for schools to work toward at least offering a semblance of whole child education. You have an opportunity to break the mold and do something, dare I say, revolutionary. It could show that it is possible to create a K-12 schooling environment that provides education for below the neckline and not just the 3 R's. Why not seize the opportunity to fundamentally reassess and truly reform Arizona schooling for long-term academic success and the health of Arizona's children and youth? Thank you again for allowing me to speak.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes this call to the public.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll now move to item 3, the consent agenda. Is there an item or items from the consent agenda that a board member would like to pull and discuss? Member Kravickas.
3I.
3I. I'd also like to pull 3M. Any others?
Actually 3G as well.
And 3G. All right, give me 1 second because we'll do a vote and then we'll discuss the other 3 items if that's okay. So, hold on. To do a quick little thing here. Thank you for your grace. Okay, so I'd like to do a motion. Just so you know, we'll pull items 3G, I, and M, and then the rest we'll take in a block vote. So, do I have a motion to approve items 3A through F, 3H, 3K and L, and 3N? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Member or Dr. Hagerman makes a motion. Do I have a second?
President Haley, there were some letters missed. Can I?
Which one?
So it would be 3A through F,
Yep.
3H,
Yep.
3J through L,
Oh, J.
and then 3N through P.
Thank you. I apologize for missing
That's
Mr.
okay.
J.
So maybe we do the
Thank you.
motion and then.
The motion is 3A through F, 3H, 3J through L, and 3N. Do I have a motion?
Through 3P.
Oh, I missed P. I didn't move to the next page. I apologize, everybody. And through P. What a day. Okay, 3N through P. Do I have a motion?
So I will make that motion. Yeah.
Dr. Hagerman, do I have a second?
I second.
Dr. Clay seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And now we'll move to discussion on item 3G. I believe that's Member Kravickas.
Thank you, Madam President and members. I'm actually fine with the item, but I wanted to spotlight it as we talk about these new matrices that we're going to be developing to evaluate these programs. This is a really good example of how right now it doesn't tell me any information. For instance, it says discontinued program assistance meets. I don't know what that means. And it says in-task standards were met. I'm sure, but that's 173 standards. So I just feel like all of these consent items, not all, many of these consent items are raising bigger issues that we as a board need to eventually tackle as we think about teacher recruitment issues and teacher preparation issues. 173 standards. How is that being met? I don't know. So I just want to incorporate that as we're thinking about the development of these matrices. The handouts that we're getting now don't really tell us much information. Of course, we're trusting Safe Board staff. I'm sure they did their job and did it well, but it doesn't tell me as a board member any information about the program or how it met those requirements.
Thank you, Member Kravickas. Deputy Director Duplanty.
President Haley, Superintendent members, Member Kravickas. I had a quick conversation with the department prior to the meeting today. Board staff can work with the department and see if we can provide you more materials to be more descriptive about how programs would meet those standards or how they were evaluated in your materials for the meeting.
Thank you. But does this not tie with the development of the new matrices? Okay. Just wanted to make that connection and kind of use this as an example of why we need them.
It's yeah. So in fact, we have a representative from the Department of Ed with us. Why don't you come on up? Thanks. So this is Deputy Associate Superintendent Jamie Wilbur.
Good morning, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. I just wanted to clarify for you on this particular program. Yes, we are in development with the state board staff on some additional matrices that we will be developing for this particular program. This is an alt program. It is a certificate program only. And so this particular program is significantly different than our traditional program. Programs that you may have seen in the past. It also is designed to be less heavy of a lift, if you will, than what a traditional program is. I did print out and bring with me what our reviewers stated as far as the InTask standards for how they scored. And what we can do in future reference is provide those additional pieces for you for those InTask standards, which there are 10. And then of course, underneath those, they have the additional components, which I believe you're referring to, Member Kravickas, which I also feel might be a little bit more beneficial for you so that you can see specifically how those reviewers are referring to how those programs are meeting those specific standards. And so I think that will provide it additional information for you. So again, this is just a program that is certificate, non-degree bearing, and again, that alt pathway, if that will be helpful for you.
Thank you. I agree. And I have no qualms with the
Absolutely.
with the item as it is. I just feel like as a board, we need to start having these bigger conversations. When were the last time the standards were looked at? I know InTask is a great organization. I understand all that, but I mean, there's just so many moving pieces to teacher preparation, let alone the new development of the alt programs. I feel like we just need to have this bigger conversation.
Agree. And we are, if you remember, we are in the middle of, well, two things. One, we're in the middle of looking at the Arizona professional teaching standards, which our ed prep programs must be aligned to. We did go back. We have a current open rulemaking right now to remove the DEI from that. So we are in the middle of that, which is a whole separate issue, which we're not going to get into today, right? But we do have, I think, a bigger conversation to have, which is having our ed prep programs aligned to InTask and what direction we want to go with that. But again, I think that's a bigger conversation than today's conversation about that with ed prep programs and the InTask piece. So we're definitely open to those conversations as we move forward.
Thank you.
Agree with you 100%.
I agree. And I think the development of the alt programs is the public/legislative attempt to try to create these alternate pathways. But at some point, I think we need to go back and make sure that the current pathways are exactly what we want. I just don't think we've had that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just also like to comment that I've had a number of conversations with board staff over the last number of years of, I understand that there's alternative pathways and where it's an easier lift, particularly for the ways that educators are able to enter the profession. I really appreciate that. But I do appreciate, Member Kravickas, your conversation and you raising this. It's something that I've had extensively behind the scenes. And so perhaps as we continue to move forward, this will be a new opportunity for us to support ADE staff as we assess what kind of information we're getting. Is it aligned? Are we making sure we have the best, most qualified individuals, regardless of the way they get to our classroom, teaching our next generation? So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Haley.
Great. I think maybe let's discuss all three and then we can vote in a block, or do we need to vote individually?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, either is fine. If you want to take them as a block, that's fine.
Let's take them as a block, and that way we can get through the discussion and then we can take the next step if that's okay. The next item is 3I. Again, I believe Member Kravickas.
Thank you, members. It's the same issue. I feel like this is a consent agenda, and honestly, this is a document I had never seen before. But as I read it, I feel like the current certification system we have is not completely reflective of what's happening in the classroom. We have these teachers and those teachers, but yet 67% of kids with IEPs are in gen ed classrooms all day. And so I think we need to have these bigger conversations of whether the system that we are using to certificate teachers and train them and prep them is really meeting the needs of the classroom. I mean, if a teacher with the standard certificate is going to have a handful, if not more, of kids with IEPs, and they're not getting that standard preparation, but then we have those teachers for those, depending on what size school district, I feel like we need to have one standard cert where teachers are ready for the learner variability that they're going to have in their classroom. We always need experts, and we have self-contained classrooms and special programs. I get that, and that's what endorsements are for. But especially when it's only like 5 classes that are differentiating between the 2 certificates, I'm not sure what we're getting at. I think we need to have these really bigger conversations and not just keep kind of twiddling around the edges when we've got a crisis out there. I also want to point out, and this is true nationally, K-12 enrollment is decreasing. Special education identification is increasing, and that's true nationally. So that's just another reason of why we need to have this conversation of how all teachers are prepared for all the learners that they're going to have in their classroom.
Dr. Clay?
When you were talking, a light bulb went off. Absolutely. We have our student enrollment going down, but our students who are our special needs students, they're going up. And we need to ensure beyond a shadow of a doubt, not just to have special needs teachers, but all of our teachers have to be trained to a certain point on how to deal with and how to help our students live to their potential. So you have, that is a great point. And I'm looking forward to peeling back the onion on that right there.
Any other comments from the board? Any other comments, Member Kravickas? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for pulling that in your comments. Just the last item for 3M. I see we have Colette here. I just had a quick question about the one. Congratulations to the department on receiving this $100,000 award. I wish it was many zeros after that because I feel like it would expand the scope of the work. I was really curious, one, and perhaps maybe you're able to address this, why specifically the health professions with a focus on rural, and why not other areas like manufacturing or other STEM related subjects? I was just curious about that.
Good morning, President Haley, members of the board. I believe that was the Office of Economic Opportunities focus. It's this grant comes through the governor's office, and so that was their focus was the nursing and medical in the rural areas. And I too wish it was more zeros at the end of 100,000. That can go pretty quickly.
It seemed to me that it was more of a planning grant to get to perhaps a larger opportunity that would go at the end of the year, hopefully January or early next year. So I'm hopeful that Arizona will be a finalist.
Yes, so are we.
My comment, as I said earlier in the president's report, I thought it was really interesting that just being able to clarify what I would call certificates of value, I think, or maybe they described it a little bit different than that. You have graciously listened to me complain about the different CTE credentials that we award and whether or not they're of value. I know we just approved several today, and board staff have heard me complain about whether or not some of these certificates are actually of value for our students. So I'm really hopeful that perhaps we do win this, and if not, perhaps there's greater coordination that can happen between Department of Economic Opportunity with the Arizona Department of Education, our community colleges, our four-year institutions, to really think about what those certificates are, or those credentials our students are learning, and if they actually lead to something of value, not just the proverbial underwater basket weaving, or flower arranging, the equivalents of those. So I'm really proud of you all and really excited, but also I'm hopeful that this could help influence our own process within the state and greater coordination. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we do continue to meet with OEO and AC4. And we have a meeting next week, in fact. So we'll be having those conversations.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
President
Executive
Haley,
Director Rob.
Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Totally fine if not, but if you did have more questions on that grant, we do have Dr. David Borofsky with us, the head of the Arizona Community College Coordinating Council, who could speak to the community college piece of it, but that's only if you all had questions.
I guess perhaps I've been super impressed by many of our community colleges and the work that they are doing. And specifically, I know firsthand from Eastern Arizona College, as well as from Arizona Western College. I know certainly here at MCC, Maricopa Community Colleges. I'm just curious for I don't know where I'm looking, if I'm looking on the TV screen or back here.
Would you like Dr. Borofsky?
Oh, yeah,
to
that
say?
would be
Okay.
great.
David, would you
Thank
mind coming up?
Just how do you see what role the community colleges will play in this unique opportunity? It is only a $100,000 grant. But how do you see that the community colleges will play a role in making sure that we have these credentials of meaning and purpose and value?
Well, thank you, President Haley, and thank you, Sean, I think. So we have, President Haley, the Learning Mobility Collaborative, which is an organization that has been working together for almost 3 years now, where we have been developing standards, definitions, working toward what a credential really is and should be. And President Haley, I'm going to send you a whole bunch of information so that you better understand exactly what we've been doing. So careful what you ask for. I will also tell you that Beverly Wilson and I believe Robert Garcia and hopefully Colette will be at our meeting next week, and others from the Department of Ed. Our relationship with them has been growing and is much better today than it was 4 years ago. And they are a significant part of the CTO challenge that we are working toward, where the Learning Mobility Collaborative is the foundation of all that work. This is actually the first year of what we hope will be a 3-year opportunity. The first year is 100,000. The next year we don't get more zeros, but we get a bigger first number. So it would be 400,000 if we get it. The third year would be $1 million. And the federal requirement is that it comes through the Department of Education in all states. We're one of 10 that were chosen out of 28. So we think this is a great opportunity to build a credential registry where our curriculum will sit, and also to work with another vendor, to be unnamed at this point because we're not certain who that is yet, but one where students can put all of their credentials, their courses, their skills, their competencies into one, for lack of a better word, wallet, where they can then get them and send them to employers to demonstrate what they actually know.
That's great, because I think that builds on the acronym has left me, but Dr. Clay talks a lot about it. So beginning in 9th grade, many students in theory build these plans, like what's my career pathway plan? And I'm ECAP, thank you. I knew it had an E and then it had a P, but I couldn't remember what else. So I apologize. But she has talked a lot about it, and I don't know that it's always super serious, but in the national conversation, individuals are talking about how our students certainly with AI, but how do we take the reading, writing, and arithmetic, the core subjects, but also ensure that students are ready to take on the challenges of work, and how that's going to continue to change and be dynamic. And I see this process as a contributing, not necessarily a solution, but something that students and families and educators can be working toward. That, yeah, I take this test, or I get this credential, I can put it in this wallet, and I'm then therefore more competitive. It will also help me as a student see where I might be successful. Should I choose a post-secondary path, whether it's additional credentials, whether it's an associate degree, whether it's skilled trades, or a formal 4-year degree. These things I think can be very, very helpful. But I'm glad that we applied. I didn't know we applied. And I'm thrilled that we're part of this conversation. And if we don't get the grant, I do hope that we will continue down this pathway, that it doesn't stop at this, just because I see some great things happening in bright spots all across the state, but I would really like our state to move forward in a concentrated way. So
two things I would say, if I may, President Haley. One is, this is the phase one of the 3-year opportunity.
Yes.
And what we have been working on, and what we will be working on next week, is creating our application for phase 2.
Great.
We are confident that we have a strong plan in place for phase 2. And then that second year, we will be not only implementing phase 2, but applying for phase 3. Should also add that one of the pieces of what we're going to be doing in phase 2 is to create career pathways.
Great.
From K-12 up through the university and beyond. And we will be involving employers. We need to get employer validation. So there's a lot of partners working on this project to ensure that what we're really looking at is students and the people in Arizona being able to be successful in whatever career they choose and the direction they want to go.
That's great. Thank you. Superintendent Horn.
Yeah, I just want to call attention to the fact that under Colette's leadership, we have a partnership with 40 of Arizona's largest companies for them to teach our CTE teachers and administrators what skills are necessary to get good jobs with their companies right after high school. So there need be no fear that the CTE programs are not giving the proper preparation for later careers.
Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Well, thank you all so much. Congratulations again. I personally was really excited about this. So, all right. With that, I'd like to kind of close out this section and make a motion to approve items 3G, 3I, and 3M.
So moved.
We'll do Member Haney, and then Member Kravickas will second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. The motion passed. Fantastic. We'll now move to item 4, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As you all know, a significant portion of the board's staff, the work of the board staff and the board goes to educator discipline. It's a significant part of the agenda each month. And we have a really, really important partner that we work with in educator discipline to help build a clearinghouse of educators who have faced discipline in the 50 states, so that those educators are not able to kind of move state to state when they've been disciplined in one but not another. And so that organization is the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification, NASDEC. Now, I'm limiting the description of NASDEC to one lane. NASDEC has quite a few really big roles in educator preparation, certification, and then also educator discipline. But we've asked Jimmy Adams, their executive director, to come and speak to you all today on sort of a couple of components. What is NASDEC? What is the educator clearinghouse? that prevents, for lack of a better term, it's a term that's used at the federal level, the sort of passing the trash, an educator getting in trouble in one state and going and teaching in another. And then to talk about their new chatbot for new educators to help them navigate ethics questions. So Jimmy, are you with us?
I am, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thanks, Jimmy. And your slides are up, so you can go ahead and start.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time, and I'll try to be brief. And I want to give you, if we'll go to the next slide real quickly, I want to give you just a quick background as to who we are. It's not just it's a long name. We go by NASDAQ, but just so you understand, we've been around since 1928. And that was when we held our first annual conference. And the purpose of that particular conference, and most of the ones since then, has primarily been to talk about teacher mobility across state lines. And that is that if they have a license in one state, they're having to move, what is going to happen and how do they get the license in the next state? From there, in 1965, we developed what is now known as the NASDAQ Interstate Agreement that all 50 states, actually all jurisdictional members that I'll get to in a few minutes, of NASDAQ belong to. And what that agreement basically says is that if you have a license in one state and you're coming to another state, if you meet our qualifications, we'll definitely try to give you the closest equivalent. But the state does have some rights to say, we still want you to learn this particular area or work on this prior to issuance of a full professional license. 1984, we developed what's known as our NASDAQ Knowledge Base, which is now an interactive knowledge base of licensing information between states where they can look that up. And in 1985, we developed what is now known as the Educator Identification Clearinghouse that I'll talk about in a few minutes. 2010, we established our online community. And in 2015, I'm going to talk about this as well, we finally established the Model Code of Ethics for Educators. And this is the first time that the education professional had any kind of Model Code of Ethics that had been established, where other organizations had, or groups such as medical doctors, started back in the 1800s. And so we were kind of late coming to that game, but we do have that now. From there came about the National Council for the Advancement of Educator Ethics that I'll mention briefly in a few minutes. And then we established our online course system and trainings. We established our podcast, and then we started doing open discussion webinars, and we established the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact in 2022. And today, we'll go on to the next slide here. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Model Code of Ethics for Educators first. And what it is and how it can be used and so forth. And really the model code it's a model of best practice which jurisdictions can adopt or adapt, and it helps to ensure states, educator preparation programs or providers, and I may refer to that as EPP, and local education agencies or LEAs or school districts are effectively equipping their educators in ethical understanding and decision making so as they're not violating those professional boundaries of a professional practice. And this critical work will lead to more intentional emphasis at a national level and local level and being placed on ethics and ethical preparation that we're trying to push out there. We want people to understand this. And ultimately, not only will ethical violations in education be reduced, we believe, but we also believe children will be safer in the classroom. And I want to emphasize a few things as we go through this. Ethics is proactive, it's not punitive. Conduct is something different, and we'll talk about that when I get to the clearinghouse. But ethics is, as I say, it's proactive, not punitive, and the goal is to help educators make good decisions before situations become a problem. Ethics is a professional practice. It's not simply a set of rules, and the model code provides that foundation. Excuse me. But educators need the opportunities to discuss, apply, and practice ethical decision making. Ethical cultures are built collectively. It's built from individual educators, but also with preparation programs, school districts, state agencies, and professional organizations. They all have a role in trying to create a profession where ethical practice is understood, discussed, and supported and recognized. So if we can, well, I've got on here on this before we move on. One of the things that we have that go along with this, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, we do have this power professional training Power Professional Conversations training videos that we have built around the Model Code of Ethics so that people can actually go through these trainings with school district employees, staff, and really get comfortable having a conversation that they're uncomfortable having now. And it's that conversation of, I continue to walk past your classroom and I see this one student that shows up every afternoon. And I want to make sure you're protecting yourself. I want to make sure you're protecting the child. I want to make sure you're protecting our school and community. Whereas before, they may kind of turn a blind eye to that and not want to address what's going on there. But these training videos empower people to have the conversation and be able to come together professionally and talk about that. If we'll go to the next slide real quickly, the Model Code is based on 5 principles. It's the responsibility to the profession, responsibility for the professional competence, responsibility to the students and to the school community, and also to make sure they use technology in responsible and ethical ways. Going on to the next slide here. Once the Model Code was developed, that actually led to the development of the National Council for the Advancement of Educator Ethics. And this is made up of different professional organizations, educator organizations across the country. And you can find out more information about all of this at our website at educatorethics.org. But these are some of the things that is the focus of the National Council, and that really every student's being taught and supported and led by educators who are ethical professionals, that they promote and foster an intentional, thoughtful, and preventative focus on ethics and ethical instruction across the profession for educators at a national, state, and local levels, and to really kind of support a greater ethical understanding and guide to behaviors and decision making. As I've already mentioned, they developed the Power of Professional Conversations, that 5-part series that we really encourage people to be able to use. And all of our items, materials related to ethics, they're available and free for anybody to use on the web. The only thing we ask is tell us who you are and how you're using them. But I want to go back and reemphasize once again that ethics is proactive, it's not punitive, and that ethics is a professional practice, not really a simple set of rules, which that is a code of conduct, and that it really takes a whole group of people to bring together that ethical culture to be built. If we can move on to the next slide. Our latest tool that we have developed, actually, if you can back up one, I think you're a slide ahead of me there. Oh, I'm sorry, I moved one slide. Jump down, I apologize. Jump down to about slide 12 if you can. Maybe 11. Right there. That's the one I want to see. And I apologize for moving that one on my presentation here. The latest thing that we have developed, and I felt like it was more appropriate to put it in this location just because it ties in so well to the Model Code of Ethics, but it's our ethical decision-making support for educators, and it's an artificial intelligence chatbot. And I want to make sure that people understand it is a decision support tool. It's not a decision maker. And that distinction is really critical. It doesn't tell an educator, here's what you have to do. Instead, it tries to help the educator slow down and think through a situation. And the idea is that if you're given or you find yourself in a difficult situation, you can go to this website, which again is at the very first bullet there, chat.educatorethics.org, type in the situation, and it will tell you these are the things that you need to consider. These are the relevant ethical principles. These are stakeholders that you need to get involved. And here are some of the possible consequences of the course of action that you may take. So you want to make sure you're making a good decision. It also tells them always know what your board policies are and your state statutes and regulations. What we really like about it is it brings the Model Code of Ethics for educators into the moment when educators need it. We want educators to encounter the Model Code during their teacher preparation programs. We want them to encounter that Model Code during their professional development and other ethics trainings, and we want them to learn it. And studying it and learning the Model Code is kind of like reading a book. On one of our recent podcasts, the developer who did this chatbot for us said the chatbot's kind of like having an open book test. You've already read the book, And when you get into a difficult situation, you need to be able to find some of those resources quickly. And if you haven't read the book, you're not going to understand those resources. But when you've read the book and you've been trained, you can use the chatbot to help you in those situations because you understand the nuances that are taking place there. One of the things that I really want to make sure that I'm clear on this as well, because we do support a lot of technology. And technology can support, but it can't replace professional judgment. And this is especially important in the era of artificial intelligence, which we find ourselves now. And we want educators to use AI responsibly and understand its limitations. Some of you may be aware we're hosting a national convening in January on artificial intelligence in education, and its ethical use is an area of emphasis for that particular convening. Any kind of AI tool should help educators think more critically, not outsource professional judgment. And the ultimate decision always remains with the educator, and when appropriate, their supervisor or colleagues and other professionals can help with that. And that's why we think that the Model Code of Ethics as a culture, and ethics in general as a culture, is paramount in any situation. If you don't mind, if we could return back to the suggestions for state Departments of Education Standards Board slide. There we go. Thank you. On this one, what we try to get people, if you want to develop this culture of ethics within your state or within your school district, we really tell you it's time to initiate some of those discussions. And you can do those with your state boards, which you're doing today. You can also have different professional standards board. You can do that with your school districts and trainings. We also encourage that you inform legislators about the importance of educator ethics and why professional ethics matters. And again, to be proactive, not punitive. We can move on to the next slide. I just mentioned about being proactive and being punitive in some of those situations. The Educator Identification Clearinghouse is more on one of those sides that now an issue has occurred and the conduct was poor and there was some type of disciplinary action that took place. And the Educator Identification Clearinghouse is a national collection point for all professional educator discipline actions that have taken place for any educator in the United States. And I'll mention we've got Department of Defense Education Activities are members of our organization. We also have Guam and Ontario and British Columbia submit information to that clearinghouse as well. So if anyone has ever had an administrative action against their license since 1985, it is in that clearinghouse. Each state or jurisdiction owns its own data. NASDAQ does not own it, and they are responsible for that data. But what this allows is when you have an applicant come to your state for a license, your licensing agency can check against that clearinghouse to see if they've ever had disciplinary action taken in the past in another state. I've also got on here that associate members, which are educator preparation providers and school districts, they can join NASDAQ and have access to this and incorporate it as part of their background check for hiring purposes. If we can go on to the next slide, excuse me. As I said, it serves as a system by which jurisdictions can quickly check. So you can go in and see, oh, this person did have administrative action taken against their license 2 years ago in the state from where they're coming. But that's not a reason to say, well, we're not going to license this person, or we don't think this person should be hired. That just tells you they've had action taken, and it's the jurisdiction's responsibility or the school district's responsibility to contact the state where the action took place and find out more information. Most actions in the clearinghouse are situations where the person made a mistake, they've corrected the behavior, and they've been allowed to continue on with their profession and their career. There are individuals that are in the clearinghouse that it's been determined that if they had a license revoked, they very well should not be around children in the future at any point. But we want states, jurisdictions, and local education agencies to make informed decisions, not just rule something out because someone's in there. As I've mentioned 2 or 3 times, it contains administrative actions, not criminal records. And administrative actions can vary from state to state based on each state's unique statutes and regulations. For example, one state may be able to revoke a license, and that's the only authority that they have, while another state may be able to admonish, suspend, or revoke a license. The information will not show up in a criminal background records check unless the administrative action was based on a criminal conviction, but even then, that criminal background records check will not talk about what occurred with the educator's license. And as I mentioned earlier, this has been in existence since 1985. And if we can go one more slide, the actions, as I say, they're not necessarily, or they're not prosecuted as criminal offenses. They are administrative actions, which you're a board that takes those administrative actions, and you determine what happens with that person's license because you hold the license, you have control over the license. You have issued it to them to be able to teach in your state, but you do have full authority over that license. I think I've already kind of talked about this, so we can move on to the next slide. The question always does come up, how does NASDAQ gather the information? Each state is responsible for entering the information once it has taken final action, and all the information that goes into the NASDAQ clearinghouse is public information. And so everything there is available through public sources and through open records, but our goal is to help states not have to look for each individual who applies for a license across 49 other states plus other jurisdictions, whether they had action taken, but have this centralized in one location. So each state, after they take that final action, they enter that into the system. Some boards meet monthly, others meet every 2 months, others meet once a quarter. And so we try to follow up with each state to make sure they're keeping their information updated. And at the end of each fiscal year, we do ask states to go in and double check the information that we have in the clearinghouse. And with that, I am happy to try to address any questions you all may have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. This has been certainly top of mind. So do we have any questions from members of the board? Dr. Clay.
I think I know the answer, but just to clarify, are we a member? The state of Arizona?
You are a member. All 50 states are members. As I mentioned, Guam, the Department of Defense Education Activities, and Ontario are members. British Columbia is not a member, but when they take administrative action against a license, they submit it to us to have that included in the clearinghouse to help us be informed.
Okay, I had 2 more questions. And when a teacher puts in, for certification or whatever, their name is run through the clearinghouse?
That is correct. That's what we train every state to do. And so they check that, whether that's a new application for license of someone who's completing an educator preparation program or someone who's applying who holds a license in another state. We have found incidences where an individual will lose a license in one state, they'll move to another state, start and complete a full educator preparation program, and then apply for a license, thinking that they can get around that way. That's why new applicants for licensure go through the clearinghouse. Each state is responsible for that. And we found those individuals that, okay, you've completed 2 educator preparation programs, but based on the revocation of the license and what was determined why it was revoked, the new state may decide we are not going to issue you a license at this point.
If I could hop in real quick, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Clay, the state has robust systems in the certification, the ADE side. Their system has a cadence of downloading information from NASDAQ. I'm not sure if is it daily? It's nightly. So every night, the ADE system is updated. That is coordinated with our case management system as well. And so both the ADE and state board staff would be updated if an educator were in front of them for some reason, either application or a report, we are aware of that information and can go to the clearinghouse.
Thank you. Last question. and I don't know who can answer this, but in reference to the ethical decision-making support for educators AI chatbot, and also for the ethics for teachers, I know especially in rural schools that are in the hinterlands, all right, they need this information. So what are we doing? I mean, I'm going to do something. I'm writing notes right now. I'm going to have somebody at one of our conferences come and present this and show them how to use the chat bot and everything else. But what are we doing as far as statewide to make sure that this information is disseminated? And is there anyone in the Department of Education who is our expert that I can zero in on and say they need to come down and see me in January for some training?
Dr. Clay, Superintendent Horn, President Haley, members of the board. I'll start it with a very little bit, and then I think we're bringing Deputy Associate Superintendent Wilbur up. Dr. Clay is, as you may know or may remember, a few years ago, we started an educator preparation resource page. The first time the board has had that. We house resources of our own team's creation, but we partner with folks in state and nationally. So we have the NASDAQ trainings linked to that page. We have the chatbot linked to that page. We have trainings from other partners, Arizona Educators Association. I know that I saw Angela in the crowd, the Risk and Retention Management Trust, several others, the Barbara Sinatra FightChildAbuse.org. So anyway, we've housed all of these resources in one area for folks to go to. So that's the tip of the iceberg of your question. I'll now go to Deputy Associate Superintendent Wilbur for more.
Hi, President Haley, Superintendent, members of the board. So one thing I wanted to share with you as recently as our Educator Prep Program quarterly meeting that we just had, we have shared the chatbot with all of our Ed Prep programs. And so I know that doesn't necessarily answer your most recent question, but I wanted to share with the board that one of the things that we wanted to do as a member of NASDAQ, myself, and attending all of the conferences and whatnot for my own professional development and certifications professional development, we wanted to make sure that we are getting this information out there as in any way, shape, or form that we can as well. So one of the ways that we are doing that is ensuring that our Ed Prep programs, many of which are classroom-based programs where our LEAs are the Ed Prep provider themselves. And so our hope is that we can get that started in there for that particular piece, and then also moving to our HR departments and making sure, because we deal primarily with HR departments in certification as well as in recruitment and retention, that will be our next piece, where we will be taking the AI chatbot and making sure that we are farming that out in that way.
Thank you, because teachers don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And their good intentions. We have a lot of teachers right now that are in a lot of hot water because they're making decisions isolated. Okay, not saying, I know this is not the answer,
right?
But what was said, critical thinking, it helps them with their critical thinking.
To support.
So again, this is great for teacher preparation, but I'm also looking for the teachers right now,
right?
Or those teachers who are in those alternative programs, right? Or there's some teachers who are not certified in the charter schools, right? So we just need to make this available in their face, one of their go-tos, instead of making decisions from their heart or what they think is right. Because I know with myself, there's a lot of things I think is right until an attorney redirects me and says, no, it is not right. All right. So we have to afford that opportunity with every educator. So that's going to be my mantra this year. We need to educate them and say, at least we can go here. Okay, instead of them just making those decisions and it gets swept under the rug and then it becomes a festering sore. And now we have to rip the Band-Aid off,
right,
and clean it out. And then it becomes very, very painful. So thank you very much for this. You've given me a new project for this year.
You're welcome.
Jamie, before you go,
yes.
Dr. Clay, part of your question was who would be a good point of contact to speak to the county superintendents. Well, we've got her here. Jamie, would it be okay for us to connect you with Dr. Clay for that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wait, I'd like to say one more thing, and then to my colleague, there's a lot of things going on in the schools with our special students, and they're thinking they're doing the right thing, and it is not the right thing. At least this will help them question themselves and say, "Wait a minute, I need to go and talk to somebody." Again, as I'm passionate because we're in the middle of some craziness in some of our schools where teachers their intentions were good, but it was detrimental for the student and also for the teacher's career. So thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for our guest today, for Jimmy Adams? Well, thank you so much for your presentation. And I played around with your chatbot tool over the weekend and was asking different questions based on the cases that have come up before us this meeting. And so it was very informative. So thank you. It said report.
Thank you for the opportunity to present and be here. And I'm glad you're finding use for it. Originally, when we developed that chat bot, I was nervous because I didn't want something that just went out on the internet and tried to find answers or create them. And we realized that we could contain it to documents that we had developed and were researched and proven to be what we wanted people to be able to pattern their work around. And so that's what we were able to do. I want to take just one other second and recognize Ms. Wilbur also. She is the newest member of the NASDAQ Executive Board as the Western representative for your whole region. And so we appreciate her work and dedication to the work that we're doing too.
Well, thanks again for your time today. We really appreciated it. And, you've given Dr. Clay more work to do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 4B, Deputy Director Duplanty. This is around presentation discussion of Arizona Teacher Pathways, Research Practice Partnership.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, it's my honor to be able to kind of kick this off and hand this over to our speakers today. Again, this is around the Arizona Teacher Preparation Pathways Research Practice Partnership, which is a collaboration between State Board, Department of Education, and WestEd. And so to present that information to you today, we have Alicia Aparaki. Sorry, I mess it up every time, and I'm so sorry. And then Rena Makinen from WestEd here to present the research, the partnership, and some outcomes.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board. I am Rena Makinen. This is my colleague, Dr. Alicia Aparaki. We're senior researchers at WestEd, and we're really excited to be here in person to talk about the partnership we've had. We just beat the dust storm last night, so we're very excited about that. And we worked it's been a 2-year partnership so far, working directly with Deputy Associate Superintendent Wilbur, as well as Deputy Director Duplanty. We meet with them every month to talk about this. It's really a collaboration, a partnership to focus on the research. And the work is going to extend through October, and we'll have our final comprehensive report. Move to the next slide. So our slides have a lot of information on them. We kind of did that intentionally. We want them to be a reference resource for you guys, but given our time, we're probably only going to hit 1 or 2 of the top takeaways from each slide. So, and then we'll have time for questions if you want to hit those. We'll also have references on the slide that we can provide if there are further questions about them. But the main background, we kind of talked about it a little bit. It's been discussed today. Prep programs are getting increasingly, they're expanding, becoming much more varied. They're becoming much more individualized. There are more online options, which tend to be faster and more affordable, and they're bringing a different and more broader set of candidates into the profession. At the same time, there's some evidence that suggests that some of the new alternative programs, those who complete them are less likely to earn a license or to stay in the profession. So next slide, please. Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, of course. So that was the framework, the background for the start of this project. The focus is really on what we're going to talk about today is attributes of preparation. These are the characteristic features of what the candidates experience So we're talking about the attributes of a program, be that sort of clinical practice, student teaching, or is it sort of mentoring? And Alicia will get into that more. And we really wanted to look, irrespective of the provider, irrespective of the program, we're not here to rank programs. We want to think about, and we wanted to study the types of experiences that candidates have that are associated with the kind of outcomes we're looking at. I'll talk a little bit about the data we had to look at that in a little bit later. But really, we're focusing on the level of preparedness that these attributes are associated with, the outcomes of certain types of attributes on their preparedness, as well as their retention on the job. So that was the effort here, and that's what we've been working collaboratively with Associate Superintendent Wilbur, as well as Deputy Duplanty. It's based on a lot of this work in Chicago Public Schools. They started this, bringing these attributes to bear, and we're building on that work by Kavita Matsko and colleagues. So we really wanted to build upon that and start laying the groundwork for some findings around what really matters in preparation.
Next slide, please. So before we get to the findings on the study, I want to highlight kind of the approach that we took to doing this work. It was intentionally designed as a research practice partnership. So this means that the questions that we developed, the analysis we did, the data we collected was all done in collaboration as a partnership between the state board staff and ADE. And that was really important. And so this is not something that was an external research kind of agenda from us, but something that we built together. And we've worked with them since early 2025, as Reno said. And we really wanted to develop questions around decision making that could really inform education prep programs and the retention of candidates. The 3 questions on this slide kind of help you see how we focused on the experiences, preparation experiences, and how they vary across Arizona, and whether there's certain features of those preparation experiences that appear more related to both retention and then certain areas of preparation, of preparedness. We are finishing up the partnership in October, and that's going to include sharing some of these findings and working with prep programs, as well as a final report that's going to be owned by the state. Next slide, please. One of the key things decisions that we made early on was that we wanted kind of to expand beyond this perspective of traditional and alternative programs. We see value in that, but we wanted to kind of dig deeper into this idea that these attributes or these components actually overlap across different programs. And some of them are in both alternative and they're in traditional programs, and some aren't. And so that was one of the reasons why we decided to focus on the features or the components and less on this kind of categorization of traditional versus alternative. And so 2 of the big terms that we use were pathways in this. So those are the actual routes that the candidate takes into the profession. And then the attributes are those features or those characteristics that are within that pathway. Next slide, please. On this slide, we have a few examples of attributes from our study. It's not every single one, but some examples of them. And so instead of taking a pathway as a single category, we kind of unpacked it. And so we looked at things such as the amount of coursework, the structure of the clinical practice, so those experiences before they became a teacher of record, and even those experiences before they had their final kind of clinical experience, student teaching or internship. What kind of mentoring did they receive? What kind of learning modalities did they have in their coursework or their learning? And then what also became important is, when did they become a teacher of record? And so in traditional programs, they become a teacher of record after they finish and they get their certificate, their license, and then become a teacher of record. We have 2 other pathways that we started to see where they become the teacher of record at different points in the program. Either before their final clinical experience, they become the teacher of record and they do that final clinical experience as the teacher of record, or they start their program as a teacher of record and go through their program as a teacher of record. And so you'll see some of these attributes come up later in the presentation when we discuss preparedness, certification outcomes, and retention. All right, next slide, please. This slide talks a little bit about how we kind of developed this, and it was an iterative process between ADE and the state board. We began with existing like literature and research that was out there, and then we looked at program documentation across the programs that ADE has. From there, we then reached out to prep program providers and we did interviews with each of them so that we could really kind of talk about and better understand what was happening in practice. Because a lot of times program documentation has happened 2, 3, 5, 6 years ago. And so we really wanted to find out what was happening right now in their programs. After that, we kind of built a framework and we kind of revised it as more data came in. And then we are doing surveys right now to finish up and fill some of the gaps from the information from the interviews. And then we have a code book, which will be revised and finalized that will serve kind of two purposes. To document the variation that exists across, and then kind of create a consistent framework for examining whether certain types of pathways are associated with stronger outcomes. Next slide, please. We wanted to give one example of an attribute and kind of break down how we looked at it across several dimensions. So for this one, clinical practice experience, this is one of the ones that we think is quite important. And so here you'll see we wanted to look at how much of this happened, how long it lasts, and then the types of responsibilities that candidates assumed while they were in classrooms. So that was kind of how we looked at this on an analytical kind of framework. And then for the code book, it's more descriptive in nature. And for this one in particular, when we say clinical practice, we're talking about practice that happens before their teacher of record. And this really helps us kind of distinguish between experiences that might look similar on paper, but offer substantially like differences in intensity or scope during the program. And then Reno's going to talk a bit about the findings and how some of these characteristics here that you see appear to be associated with different outcomes that we looked at.
Next slide, please. We looked at a lot of data. The first bullet here talks a little bit about what Alicia said. We looked at program documents and talked to program leaders. But we're also able to survey early career teachers in sample of 5 districts that we work with ADE to identify. That was in Deer Valley, Crane, Prescott, Tempe Union, and Vail, and we had over 1,000 teachers respond to those surveys. We also got administrative data from ADE on teachers who were certified in Arizona between 2021 and 2025. Those folks, what their job placements were each year, as well as their licensure test passing rates for those teachers. So we could look at both sets of data. So we could look at retention and preparedness to the extent that licensure tests are an indicator of that over time. So we looked at descriptively, we could group candidates by their group of attributes, their experiences, and then look at those groups' performance on the outcomes to see the associations between certain types of experiences and certain outcomes in preparedness and retention. Next slide, please. So this is the survey results we saw from the 5 districts. They were asked in your first year teaching after completing your teacher preparation program, how well prepared were you to do these variety of instructional practices, engage in these? So these are in this report, the percentages reflect those who said they were well prepared or very well prepared to engage in these instructional practices. And as you can see, I'll just talk about the bottom 2 as it's come up early. Folks were lower proportions of folks said they were well prepared to teach students with special needs in their first year, teach students who are English learners in their first year. I think that's come up a little bit this morning already. So these were overall results across the 1,000 teachers we saw, but then we looked at groups of those teachers. Next slide, please. And certain groups of those teachers, particularly those who had a student teaching intern certificate, the key word there is intern. That means they were a teacher of record as they were a student teacher. And those who were subject matter expert credential, they reported feeling less prepared in their first year across all those practices. However, teachers who engage in student teaching more often, that is the clinical practice, student teaching as we understand it, felt well prepared to use a variety of instructional methods or to teach to state content standards than those who did no student teaching. Also, additionally and notably, teachers whose student teaching spanned more than one classroom, they more often reported feeling well prepared to teach EL students or students with disabilities, as I think they had more exposure to students. Next slide, please. We just got the licensure test results fairly recently, so I just have this slide on it, but this is our early analysis. We looked at first-time passing rates on various certification exams and looked at different teachers who went through different pathways or attribute groupings, if their performance on those licensure exams was higher or lower. Generally, the first-time passing rates on the general elementary or secondary level certification exams and the Arizona Foundations of Reading tests were very high and not very variable. However, we did see group differences on the secondary math exam results. In that saying that candidates who had a pre-culminating practicum, that is prior to the student teaching, or student teaching experiences had higher first-time passing rates on secondary math certification exams. And that's the 3 exams, the secondary math exam, the middle grades math exam, and the middle grades and early secondary math exam are separate exams, but these results held for all of them. So it shows a bit that this clinical practice has a relationship with preparedness to the extent that licensure exams suggest preparedness. So I think this clinical practice theme is one that's extends through a lot of our work. Next slide, please. We're going to shift to job retention now, retention over time. The first column shows different pathways or teaching contexts. The first column of data shows the teachers who certified in 2021 and 2023 who stayed in the workforce for 3 or more years. And the final column is those who stayed in their initial LEA 3 or more years. The bottom row is the statewide proportions. 76% remain in the statewide, 68% remain in their initial LEA. So it's good. You can look through the columns and see, one way to read this is seeing which numbers deviate from those state figures. And here it's really the state's classroom-based local programs are seeing very high retention rates. They're local, grow your own efforts in a lot of cases, and teachers and those individuals are staying in their initial LEA and in the state. At the same time, you're seeing more mobility among charter school teachers who tend maybe not to send the initial charter, might move to a different charter. The next slide, please. This slide's really dense, and I apologize. It's similar, but it's for the different attribute types. Here, really, the key number, if you look at the statewide, the top row, the key variable number is this type 3 teacher of record, which is the folks who basically were working as a teacher of record as they earned their license and got their preparation done. So that aligns with the classroom-based programs. It's kind of the same number here. That's really the only deviation here. So those are the main takeaways. We're seeing sort of more higher job retention in the classroom-based programs, but you see higher preparedness maybe in the programs with more clinical practice opportunities. So it's a balance when we think about these 2 outcomes. We might be seeing different outcomes from different attribute patterns, and that's what we really want to talk about with the prep programs. But we've got a key couple takeaways that Alicia is going to close us up with.
So next slide. So a few reflections to close us out before questions. So the large majority of teachers in the state are still being prepared by the IHEs and traditional pathways, but the local grow your own type programs, classroom-based programs, those numbers are growing. Retention decisions are often like local market-based or family-oriented. And so the classroom-based programs are often targeting people in their community members or already somehow affiliated with the school systems in the area. And so these programs are cultivating teachers who stay. What the question is then what is the quality of the teaching and the prep that they receive as a teacher of record from the start? And then we are seeing also the clinical practice being something that's highlighted in the data so far, and that being maybe a key or important factor in quality at the start of their teaching profession. Yeah, and I think that clinical practice kind of stands out as a variable that's worthy of continued attention. And we're trying to balance this idea of seeing retention and wanting teachers to stay, but also wanting them to feel prepared and be effective from year 1 as well.
Yeah, I just add a final point. I think as we talk to the different types of programs, which we're planning to do, we talk to the classroom-based programs, we want to talk to them about clinical practice. Are there any opportunities for these teachers, these new teachers who are working as teachers of record? Can they be in a community of practice? Can they learn? Did they have opportunities for that? And for the more institutions of higher education, can they connect the mentorship in the program from the IAG with the mentorship they're getting locally? So they can integrate it so they can get the retention rates higher. So it's a retention conversation with the IHEs, and it's a quality of clinical practice conversation with the classroom-based programs. But that's what we're planning to do, and that's what our culminating report will reflect, those conversations, which we're scheduling for September and October.
Thank you.
That's all we have. Thank you.
But before we get to questions, I want to thank Reno and Alicia, not only for this work, but they are also leading the work on the educator preparation program matrices that Member Krivik mentioned earlier. So we're working very closely with them and with Jamie and the team from ADE. So thank
You'll
you.
see us again.
I suspect there's lots of questions. So Dr. Hagerman and then Member Haney, you'll go next, and then Dr. Clay, and yeah.
We'll go around. So remind me that the Type 3 program, is that an intern program? So the teacher's starting from the beginning. So just remind me like what happens in that one kind of program.
That's a classroom-based program, so that is where
So like a school district is running a classroom based. Are they starting in the classroom as a classroom teacher or of record from day one?
day one.
And basically, if I was going to summarize in Scott language, you basically found is that had a value because it's people who are already in the community, so they didn't have to land there. But then on the other side, the more you had clinical kind of experiences, the quality of the teaching seems to be better. So how do you balance those two issues? So that's essentially your last point you were trying to bring up.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Member Haney.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation and the work that you're doing. I'm really interested in this in terms of what your deliverable is going to be and how to get the water to the end of the row. For those of us who are setting up educator preparation programs, how can we get access to this report or to the work that you're doing?
The state will have it, so you all will have access. You can ask Bruce or Jamie once it's finalized. It's going to be owned by the state. We're not planning to publish it. Everything's owned by the state.
President Haley, Superintendent, members, Member Haney, we'll invite Deputy Associate Superintendent Jamie Wilbur to kind of talk about the plan on their side, since they do the boots on the ground work with ed prep programs.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm back again.
Welcome back.
Sorry, you're probably so tired of me today. President
Not yet.
Haley-
We're not tired of
Not
you yet.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, we have a plan that Reno and Alicia will be coming out and doing a presentation to our ed prep programs in October, question mark? Yeah, in October. And then from there, our plan will be to take some of the technical assistance pieces that they will be providing to us and then delivering those to our ed prep programs. And then if there's any follow-up from that, we are happy to provide that and kind of weave that into some of the follow-up pieces for you all as board members as well.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Clay.
Thank you for the presentation. Just to clarify, teacher record, give me the definition of teacher record. Just to clarify.
Teacher of record is when you are the teacher of record in the classroom from the first day that you start your preparation program.
Okay, thank you.
A definition that's commonly used is that it's the teacher that's responsible for the planning, delivery, and assessment of instruction. And, you could, in a single teacher classroom, would be responsible for all the children during that period of time.
Lead teacher.
Okay, so basically, for example, if I'm a math teacher, I've never taught math before, I can, and I'm from the community, I can go into a classroom and be in charge of everything with no one. Usually when I look at teacher record, I'm thinking of I'm a student teacher or whatever, and I have a teacher who is certified and who's been a teacher for a while, kind of watching me, making sure I do the right things. So that's not happening with this person. See, I'm just asking. So this person they're hitting the ground running. Where is the, you know what I'm trying to say here?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Clay, there are several pathways in Arizona that allow, once you pass the hurdle of the fingerprint clearance card and certification, to go directly to the classroom. And so the subject matter expert is a 6-12 certificate in which you demonstrate some competency in the content. Not necessarily, there's no preparation required for that certificate. Fingerprint card, that certificate, and then an LEA can choose to put you in the classroom on day one with a mentor, with no mentor. There's no state requirements on that. The alternative teaching path is similar. Alternative teaching path requires a bachelor's certificate. Again, fingerprint card, some basic, just administrative. You're awarded the certificate. You've matched the job with a program, and then you can literally be in the classroom. The LEA can put you in the classroom on day one. typically with an alternative prep program, there is some notion of some sort of mentor, some sort of collaboration between the program and the school in terms of oversight, but that may not hit on day one, or it may hit on day one. It may be a boot camp. So there's a lot of riding on the LEA to know that they're hiring somebody that may not have a preparation program that's included field experience, clinical practice, and a lot of pedagogy, and how they choose to put that person in the classroom, the supports they choose to give them prior to the first day, and then of course ongoing. Okay, I got nods from my colleagues. So.
There's a root to the fruit of my question. And what it is that when I became a teacher and I was on an alternative path, my first school I went to, they were on point. But the second school that I worked for, it was, here's the keys, have a good luck with it. And I don't want that. I don't want that to happen to anyone else. It's just, I had experience, but I had another school behind me. But how many teachers, and this is not you, this is just me thinking out loud. A lot of teachers, that's their experience. Here's the keys, good luck with it. I'll see you later. I just don't want to see that happen. And so when I saw that, it kind of triggered me. I'm like, oh my goodness, and then you're saying that they're doing better. Are they really doing better? Now in my head, I'm saying, are they really doing better when I was one of those people? And I did do well, as you can see, right? But are those teachers is discipline higher? Okay, than any? I would like to know that. Is their discipline a little bit higher than somebody who's had somebody watching over them and actually mentoring them? But then you're saying most schools do that, but they're not required to do that. So this is where my head is going right now. I don't have anything negative to say about it. It's just a little bit concerning, and I'm going to be asking a lot of questions when I go into schools about, when you're doing this and they're teacher of record, do they have a mentor, et cetera, or are they just turnkey? We're glad you filled the space and have a nice day. So, but thank you very much. This has caused me to think a lot. I appreciate your presentation very much. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Dr. Clay, that was a question we did address in May or June when Jessica presented the Educator Discipline Annual Report. In fact, I think Jessica's talked about it a few years in a row at this point, but we have found that educators with less coursework in pedagogy or ethics or training, educators that go right to the classroom, have a higher percentage of incidents with discipline.
Can I add something? Sorry to interrupt. President Haley, Superintendent, members of the board, Dr. Clay. I touched base with Deputy Associate Wilbur. The department has recently done the work to get registered apprenticeships for teachers stood up. And so there's a lot of work there, but that loads clinical experience up front. It kind of shifts the alternative. It's an alternative. One of the pathways is alternative. However, instead of being in the classroom the first year, you are having a clinical experience. Would you like to just briefly talk about that, Jamie?
Jamie's back again.
Hi, President Haley, Superintendent, members of the board. So we have launched the K-12 teacher apprenticeship, which my team would love to share with you, but it is two paths. We've built a pre-bac and a post-bac pathway. So our apprentices are never teacher of record, which is beautiful. And so the idea of this is that we are building supports, wraparound supports for these apprentices on day one, and they are learning from a journey worker or a mentor teacher anywhere from 2 to 4 years while they are learning how to be a teacher, so that when they step foot into the classroom, they are well prepared and ready to go. And so we do not have any completers yet, but we will be able to follow their trajectory all the way through completion and then into the classroom. And so we finished last year with 41 apprentices and going into this year out of our pilot year with almost 100 apprentices in the program. So we're happy to come and share with you about that, but just so you know kind of where we're going with that program.
I just want to say, take your time. Okay. Don't rush it.
We are one of the last states in the
Okay.
United States to join the apprenticeship
Okay.
piece. So definitely the apprenticeship, K-12 teacher apprenticeships have been in existence for about almost 5 years now. And so we just finished our pilot year last year.
Thank you.
So absolutely.
Because listen, we love our teachers. We don't want to see them get in trouble. What hurts me more than anything is when I get a teacher that's coming out of industry, like a CT teacher,
Yeah.
and they are on fire, ready to go, but they don't know what they don't know, and then they're put in the classroom, and it's good luck with it. Okay, I was a CT teacher. Okay, so I'm going by not only my experience, but the experiences of some of my peers. So when I say take your time, let it spread out the 2 years, 3 years, because then we'll keep them longer and they'll stay out of trouble because these are good people, but they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, just a quick reminder, we did have Dr. Victoria Thiessen present to the board a few months ago on the apprenticeship program. We can happily have Shannon, I'm volunteering you, Shannon. Shannon has volunteered to clip that presentation and we can send it out to all of you as a reminder. Thanks, Shannon.
Are you okay? Okay. Member Katniss.
Thank you, President Haley. Thank you for this presentation. Your work is so important, especially as we prepare our future educators to not only be prepared for that first year teaching, that second year teaching, but also to have sustainable careers. I think that one of the things that stands out is that we have a lot of people enter the education field and after a few years, then they walk away. And part of that is preparedness. So I have a couple of questions. My first question is, I'm on slide 10, and I was looking at the early career teachers' self-perceived first year preparedness. And one of the numbers that really stands out to me is that only 47% of early career teachers felt prepared to teach students with special needs. And only 42% felt prepared to teach English language learners. What do you think is driving those numbers, and what should preparation programs be doing differently?
I'm also a formal faculty member of teacher education. I don't want to hypothesize too much, but these were taken from specific districts that have classroom-based programs, and we could pull the data and see kind of where they might fall. But our guess is it's based on the kind of preparation they received. So there was less of some of the clinical experiences, there was less time in the classroom, and so they had feelings that maybe some in their coursework might have differed too, and the modality of might have differed, so they might have felt not as strong in those areas.
We did see higher numbers on those two for folks who had more student teaching across more classrooms. So the more exposure they got to students in general, they started to see more students with differing needs, be they language needs or disabilities. So the more student teaching, the more exposure you get across different classrooms, not just in one classroom. We saw that those numbers were higher once they had that kind of exposure. So that's really it. It's getting the chance to practice and understand different classroom environments before you're the teacher of record. And I think that I don't think the folks here really had those experiences.
We have some work in another state as well that have mimicked those findings too. So I will say a state that's similar to yours. And so we do think that that's another kind of added dimension of validity to it, because we've seen it across more than one state too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just wanted to bring that to our attention, especially because we are a state with so many English language learners, and we are a state, as was mentioned earlier, as you know, our populations in schools are decreasing, our special needs populations might be increasing. And so those two things in particular, I think are really important for teachers, especially whenever you're a brand new teacher. I was, a brand new teacher 15 years ago. And as a brand new teacher, I went through an alternative teaching program. And I think that some of the things that I felt a little uneasy about and a little bit, nervous about was because I was not necessarily given all those opportunities. But I was very fortunate to get a master's degree. And in my master's degree program, I think that I was able to learn those things. But I think that so much of our teacher preparedness programs with that clinical aspect and the student teaching aspect is so important for our teachers to just feel comfortable navigating your classroom, navigating what your students need from you as a teacher. So I have another question, if that's okay. How should we balance accessibility and affordability of alternative pathways with ensuring that every new teacher receives meaningful clinical experiences before being responsible for their own classroom? Because I think that sometimes as teachers, you might have to pick the cheaper option. So how can we make sure that the better option is also the cheaper option?
That's a difficult question that we're definitely grappling with. I also did an alternative program. I did a residency program, so I did get that clinical experience. But it's not cheap.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we'll have to continue to discuss. Like, how do we give individuals the option to be able to do this, who want to do it, and money is an issue, versus also then be able to give them the experiences they need to be able to be prepared and to be high quality educators in the classroom. I don't think there's a simple, easy answer to that, other than to things like, yep, apprenticeships, I think, is another good way in. That is going to be, I think, an affordable option, but it's going to give them a lot of that experience. I think we have to continue to be creative about those kinds of new pathways.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I really appreciate your answers. I'm just, I really want us to really think about these things. So thank you.
Member Kravickas.
Thank you so much. I really love this. I love research. And I think it's great that Arizona has such a wide array of choices. I love that people can stay in their home communities. I love the community colleges are able to help. I love all that. But your research is critical. At what point do we evaluate what components? But for us as a board, what are we going to do with this research? Policies have to change. The programs have to change. So I think we need to think about it just not as, oh, that's great, thank you, and hope it helps, but how is this going to be impacting the work that we do as a board, I think is really critical. I have one very specific question, though, because it's something I just never thought of until teacher of record came up. So if it's a gen ed classroom, just using averages, there's 30 kids, 5 of them have IEPs, 2 of them are ELLs. The teacher of record is the person with, I'm assuming, a standard cert in that classroom, right? So, and this kind of goes back to my never-ending pet peeve with these kids and those kids. Rather than stopping, we got to stop thinking about who's going to teach these kids and those kids, but how are we going to prepare teachers for the learner variability that they're going to experience in every classroom? Again, I know we need endorsements and special training for lots of different reasons, but who's the teacher of record in that scenario? I mean, so, let me ask a different question. Is the teacher of record a placement decision or a student decision? I always thought of it as a placement, like it's a classroom, it's those kids. Because the teacher of record, if it's a standard cert, then it's not the special ed teacher. See where I'm going? It's just, I feel like we need to really kind of blow up some of these concepts and rethink how we're doing this, because every classroom in Arizona has learner variability in it. And so if you're the teacher of record, I know I'm kind of rambling, but I'm struggling to even ask the question because I look at all this and my head swirls, just knowing that I can't repeat it often enough. 67% of kids with IEPs are in gen ed classrooms all day, and they're invisible. I always say the invisible disabilities.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Kravickas,
I'm sorry,
I'd
Bruce.
invite Reno to talk to bridge that gap with the matrices work that I think begins to get at the notion of at least the training part for gen ed teachers.
We're building in one of the matrices that Alicia is developing is around strengthening inclusive practices among gen ed teachers. So there's going to be an expectation of a set of, you should talk more about this, but a set of expectations that are clarified in the application about how they're training the gen ed teachers in inclusive practices. Do you want to talk a little more about the domains or anything? How that's going to work?
The matrices are envisioned as a program level tool, so not like a course level tool. So for sometimes what we do is we evaluate the single course that the candidate is receiving, making sure we hit kind of these goals in the course. But what we're attempting to do with the matrices is say, these are the goals, and this is what they should be able to be exposed to, assessed on, and see in their clinical practice throughout the program. And it's focused on inclusive practices. So we have special educators from our team who have come and pulled from the IES frameworks as well as from standards as well, and said, okay, these are what general ed teachers should be able to do with a special ed lens. And then during the program approval process, the reviewers will look at the matrices and see, okay, does the program have each of these? Because they're going to provide artifacts. Do we see the artifacts, and do the artifacts show that they're able to have exposure to this and be assessed on this and practice this in clinical practice across the program? And so that's what we're working on for inclusive practices.
So yeah, there's 3 matrices. There'll be an inclusive practice matrix, there's going to be a numeracy matrix, and there'll be a literacy matrix to make sure that there are domains and practices in those areas that are getting assessed and utilized in clinical practice across the gen programs.
Thank you so very much. And I look forward to those. I would just encourage us to also start thinking about the way we talk about things, that it's not these kids and those kids. It's just learner variability that's in every class with every kid. Anybody who has kids knows we have learner variability, whether or not they're diagnosed, whether or not they're officially in ELL. Kids are different, and our teachers just need to be prepared for that. But I still have my question, and I apologize that I haven't asked it well clearly. So a standard, to someone with the standard cert in that example I gave, is the teacher of record for all 30 of those kids?
I'll go out on a limb and President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Kravickas. The definition of teacher of record is the person responsible for the planning, delivery, and assessment of instruction. And so if a student is placed in that classroom, that they are the teacher of record for that student. I would say that there is maybe some nuance there in terms of placement, in terms of the services that are required as part of the IEP. And so if the student's still in the room for social studies, or not, that would be bad, math, and is receiving math instruction, but then the IEP calls out for specific services to be pulled out in a resource room, that may differentiate that model a little bit. The resource teacher who's working in a small group or one-on whatever the services are described in the IEP might be the person responsible for assigning that grade and be considered the teacher of record for that. But it just depends, and it's varied depending on how the IEP team has set that up and what is stated in the IEP.
Thank you, and I appreciate your attempt at answering my very poorly worded question, I'm sure. I appreciate that, but it kind of goes back to the fact that, yeah, let's say that student's pulled out for 20% of the day in resource. There's still 80% of their day in the class with a teacher that has a standard certificate. And we've seen the data over and over again, they don't feel prepared. So I just want to keep rehashing that and not just thinking about SPED classrooms or those classrooms down the hall with those kids, and they're in every classroom.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, just a very quick reminder of scheduling. We are working with ADE and with Reno and Alicia on the rubric matrices project. Our goal is to bring it to the board probably January, probably early next year, for you all to review, vet, and then eventually adopt. So we're not far from those being done, just to build a little excitement towards them.
Member Haney.
Once again, thank you, and thank you for being willing to be bombarded with all of our questions. But when Member Kravickas was talking, it reminded me of a question that I have about this, and that's in terms of not just the variability of the students to be taught, but the variability of those that are entering the profession. And is the research, is there data regarding the qualities, the attributes, the capacities, even of those that wish to be a teacher, and connecting them with the type of preparation program or the attributes of a preparation program that will be most effective for them? Is that question clear?
I wish we were at the point where I could feel confident saying that we are doing that. We're saying, okay, here you are, candidate A, and this is what we know about you. This would be the great pathway for you to go. I don't see that happening.
Ever? We can never see. I mean, because you've got 18, 19-year-olds, plus you've got the non-traditional older student that wishes to go back to
I would say the best place maybe we have it happen is actually in some of these classroom-based programs where some of the classroom-based candidates, like I said, when they're in the community. When I say they're in the school community, like they're paraprofessionals or things like that, and the principal says, you know what, you're great. Like, you're great. You should be one of our teachers, and then points them in a direction of like a pathway that might work for them. I think that's the only place I've seen it.
It's very individualized. People don't really have an opportunity for outreach. I mean, you might know of a program because the university, you live near the university, you might know about that program, but you might not know about all the options. So I think it's that those connections. I think the LEAs, the employers, they need to be better about outreach to say, become a teacher in our LEA. Here are pathways to that. And I think a lot of them do that, particularly the classroom-based programs. I think all districts could do a better job of that, perhaps recruiting and making those connections. But it does end up being really individualized based on the particular situation they're in. But I do think there are opportunities to do it better.
That's right where that magic happens, right? Where the district finds the individual that shows the promise or the ability or that capacity to be an excellent teacher, and then just needs X, right? Or this set of preparation to be able to step into the classroom. Anyway, thank you.
Member Katniss.
One more question. Thank you. First off, I love how thoughtful and kind you have been this whole time. So thank you. So kudos to that. But also just thank you for just sharing this research with us, because we as the state board, we want to make the best decisions we possibly can for all students in the state. So my question, and I don't even know if you can answer this, but I'm curious. If you could change one thing about teacher preparation in Arizona, or if there's one thing that we're doing really, really, really well compared to other states, like that you've learned so far, what would you recommend that we prioritize as the State Board of Education? If there's something that like we should definitely be changing, or there's something that you're like, no, you guys are doing great.
So, I mean, this is a team answer, I guess. It's mentoring. And making sure that the person has someone who can lead them in their first few years so they can feel guided. I also would emphasize student teaching and clinical practice is very important for the job. For you
to clarify what we could be doing better, or what we're doing great.
I think that's just improvement. Like, that's a key factor. I think there's places where we see it done really, really well.
Okay.
Even in some of the classroom-based programs. There's a couple of classroom-based programs in the state who have said, we are carving out our own way, special coaches who are going to work with these candidates who are coming in from day one. They're not a part of some other program. This is what they're dedicated to. They have a schedule. They're in the class every single month with this candidate. We are doing this and we're doing that. And then that's amazing. But that's like one or two that we've talked to. So I think this idea of like being able for all of the programs to know the really great things that are happening around mentoring and clinical practice, I think would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's bright spots, highlighting the bright spots and sharing that information. I think doing it well, because it's all changing. It's very dynamic. But as we learn new programs and new sort of innovative ideas, spotlighting them and showing that. I think that's a way the state board could.
Can we do that?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Katniss, we have over the last few years highlighted specific educator prep programs where the data is showing that their teacher candidates are remaining in the field longer. But also, I'm going to invite Jamie back up to talk, to just quickly talk. One of the things that Reno said, he said at the ed prep level, it's, student teaching. At the induction level, when they get that job, it's mentoring. And I know Jamie's team has done some really good work in that space, identifying the importance of mentoring. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So we have beginning induction mentoring standards that are blessed by you all. If you did not remember, I am happy to send those to you again. But the recruitment and retention team has presented on those standards around the state, and we go out and we support our LEAs with those standards. And actually, right now, my team is presenting an induction and mentoring 101 training over at the department for a group of LEAs that are interested in how they can strengthen their mentoring program. And so that is something that we've presented on the local and national level. So that is something that we definitely know that that is important. It's data that we have gathered last year as part of the teacher retention study report, and is something that we will continue to gather and report back to you all on about how many of our LEAs are putting that into play. Not only just at the 3-year mark, but we've gathered information for how many of our LEAs, are providing mentoring within a 1 or 2 year time frame. And we know that research shows, right, if we are providing those wraparound supports, our teachers are less likely to leave when they are feeling supported all the way around. So thank you. I hope I answered your question. Okay.
I just had one quick question. One, just to affirm the mentorship and sort of the coaching and the real-time guidance. In my time working in education policy, time and time again over the last 20 years, the programs that stand out with high efficacy rates tend to be those that have those components. So I'm glad that continues to be the case. It is hard, and you do have to build that as part of your program. My quick question was the 5 school districts that you chose, why them?
We discussed with Bruce and Jamie, and we wanted to get a sample, a mix that had classroom-based programs, those experiences, and they also had a mix of some IHE prepared teachers. So it was a sample. It was sort of a purposeful sample that we discussed with the state team to be representative as we could, and we had relationships that we could reach out and get a good response rate. So it was more a purposeful sample and discussion with both Bruce and Jamie and Alicia and I to figure it out. But it wasn't necessarily voluntary. We reached out to them and they answered. So we wanted to get a mix. That was
That's
really
great.
cool.
Okay, cool. Any other questions from members of the board? Well, thank you all so much. I'm glad you guys made it through via the, I don't know if it was a haboob or if it was just a dust storm, but got lots of warnings last night. So I'm glad you made it safely, and we appreciate your time. I'd like to have a little break for all of us. So let's do about 11 minutes. So we'll come back at 11:15, if that's all right. Thanks. We'll gather together in a few minutes. So if you could wrap up your conversations. Great. Awesome. All right, we're now going to move on to item 4C. And Executive Director Ross. This is about the board's revision process for the A through F school accountability system.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. This is an exciting item. It's sort of kicking off a series of items over the next 4 months for the board, where the board will potentially vote on making some crucial revisions to the A through F school accountability system. For today, I thought it would be helpful for the board, for the field, kind of for those watching the meeting, to just do a quick item of review to talk about where we sort of have been over the last couple of years. And I promise I'll be brief with the system and then the revision process itself and then where it's going, especially because the next item will be the first official vote potentially by the board in this cycle. So I will go ahead and start. I want to start with just a reminder, highlighted and bolded and yelled from the mountaintop, that the board, the discussion of revision for the A through F school accountability system is to begin with letter grades for school year 26-27. That's the school year that's just started, a couple weeks ago for some. And so none of these changes would be in effect until the letter grade release in October of 27. So there is a concurrent letter grade release that's going to happen over the next 3 months for letter grades from 25-26. But your discussion of revisions are all focused on next year. So just again, Claire, I know you all know that, but I want to clarify, we do get questions occasionally. So again, any revision discussions are for the 26-27 school year and would be implemented for the letter grade release that would occur in October of 27. So just a quick reminder of how we got here. We have had school accountability in Arizona since 2010. In 2016, the legislature, and under leadership from Governor Ducey at the time, did vote to pass Senate Bill 1430, which made a pretty significant philosophical shift in the A through F system. Prior to Senate Bill 1430, the system had been primarily proficiency and growth based, though weighed much more heavily towards proficiency. The reasoning given by the ledge, by the governor, and by the state board at the time for the need for the changes was really about the correlation between poverty and proficiency. So there's a almost 90% correlation between poverty and proficiency, meaning if the model were just proficiency based, it would disadvantage students of low socioeconomic status and schools that serve those students. And so the legislature, the governor, and the board put forward a model of multiple measures. And so those are those indicators you all are so familiar with at this point, and probably dream about them at this point like I do. And we again moved from predominantly proficiency and growth to a system that considered proficiency, growth, the proficiency and growth for English language learners. So that was the one subgroup called out both at the federal and state level. Graduation rate, college and career readiness indicators for high school, and acceleration readiness indicators for K-8. So the board, in development, in collaboration with the department and the technical advisory committees, built the system and then assigned weights to each of the indicators within the system, giving preference to growth in K-8 and then more of a balance of growth and proficiency in 9-12. What you'll notice was not in statute is the idea of bonus points. These came along a little bit after the system had been built and adopted in 2016, 2017. And really, Sean Smith will go into a little bit more detail about this in the next item. But one of the reasons was it was a combination of things. These were behaviors that the board wanted to incentivize schools to consider or to take on. Or these were elements that arose after the building of the system, and the board at the time wanted to assign them to bonus points to have a chance to examine the data from these items before then eventually potentially incorporating them into the system. So you'll see that bonus points are given for things, everything from special education enrollment to proficiency on the science exam. One of the struggles with bonus points that have been pointed out to the board and the tax over the years is they're not equitably available to all schools. It depends on the model of school. High schools have up to 9 points available. K-8s have 5, but if you're a K-4, you would only have 2 because you don't have access to the science test at 5th grade. So that's been a point of discussion that's arisen over the years to the tax and to the board. And then Arizona is the only state that has bonus points in its system. This is something pointed out by the Auditor General in their audit report. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So we have the system that statute called for the board to create. The board created it. The tax and the board and the department have maintained and refined it over the years in an attempt to, in a continuous improvement cycle. One of the pieces of data that we use when looking at the system in order to gauge where we are is what other states are doing as well. And I show you this slide just to show that while not one-to-one, Arizona is pretty comparable in its weights in its system to the other states that have letter grade systems. So not again, the same all across the board, but for the most part in the same ballpark in those weights. But then if you look at letter grade distribution, this is from last school year. Arizona did have a high percentage of K-8s and high schools earning A's and B's. And then if you look at Arizona compared to other states, again, a high combination of letter grades, A's and B's. This is just for context, just to illustrate kind of some of the trends we've seen in letter grade distribution. But what also was occurring during this time was the technical advisory committees were working diligently to implement indicator scoring. This was called for in statute. The law related to giving letter grades for each indicator passed, and before even 3 years of trend data could be collected, even 2 years of trend data could be collected, the pandemic hit. And then we came out of the pandemic and then started at the advent of Superintendent Horn coming into office, and from the charge of this board, we began working on, at the technical advisory committees, implementing indicator scoring. As indicator scoring was considered thoughtfully and really wrestled with by the TACs, what they saw was, and this is reflected in a letter to the board in December of 24 by Sean Rickert, who was the chair of the technical advisory committee at the time. What they found was looking at the summative system through the lens of indicators. One, it's not the way it was originally designed, right? It's a summative system, and now it's being asked to go from whole to part. But it revealed some issues in the summative system that they felt had to be addressed before indicator scoring could be implemented efficiently, effectively, and accurately. So they entered into that process. And you all know that process well, because it then coincided with us asking even more of your time for a series of study sessions. Huge shout out to Sean Smith at the department and his team for helping to lead and arrange these sessions, and Jessica and Bruce from our team. We started study sessions. We started with proficiency and growth, and then held one for each of the indicators. This allowed the board to do a deep dive into each of the indicators, understand the purpose of the indicator, what was currently successful in the way the indicator was measured in the summative system, and then what was maybe subject to some revision and change. The board would, after attending those study sessions, would ask a series of questions, and then board staff would work with ADE staff to turn those into prompts that the board would then vote to send to the technical advisory committees to investigate, which they have been doing and have sent the board some feedback back in those areas. So all of that has been happening over the course of the last really more than 2 years, but the study session piece pretty close to 2 years at this point, which brings us to where the board is today, which is at the precipice of decision making for the A through F school letter grade system. One of the other factors, well, actually, let me talk about this first. Sorry. One of the themes that emerged from the A through F study sessions, some of the themes were to remove internal caps on points for indicators in order to obtain more accurate and nuanced data, make all currently norm referenced indicators criterion based, reduce the compensatory nature of certain indicators, where in the system they were there to balance other indicators and have them more standalone, and then provide the board a mechanism by which to effect change at the indicator and summative levels, which is what we're showing you all today. Just to get a chance to reuse my favorite image, apparently, what we've done is to build you all radio dials, where before you only had the ability to set cut scores at the summative level, and really even then it was prior year or a full standard deviation on the entire system, which is kind of a hammer. Our goal was to give you much more ability to fine tune. And so with the system that we've built that Sean Smith will begin discussing today and then in tomorrow in the retreat as well, you will see that the board now has the ability to establish cut scores for each indicator, and then also a summative cut score for the entire letter grade. And then actually, even if the board so chose, to look at the weights of the system. So where before you had sort of one path, now you have many. Speaking of that, one of the things we've talked about and we've seen in the feedback from the field quite a bit is we very purposely and consciously built a system by which the board can affect great change. The board just wants to consider the pace at which that is done. Is if everything can be changed, should everything be changed all at once, and what could that potentially mean? And then we had, of course, gone through an audit. I say it flippantly as if my beard weren't black before the audit started and is now gray. We went through an audit, and the Auditor General's findings really supported the work the board was doing. The audit findings, encouraged the board to continue its revision process, which it had begun well before the audit process. One of the specific recommendations from the Auditor General was to remove bonus points from the system to take the elements that are currently within them and roll them into the system as appropriate, but to remove bonus points as a concept, since it's not in statute, it is not sort of equitably available to all. And then again, Arizona is the only state that has them. And then to implement letter grades for indicators, which the board is working towards right now as well, and then review the summative cut score, which will be an automatic with the advent of indicator scoring. So within 1 month, I mean, the board just received the Auditor General's audit in June. We have no meeting in July. Within 1 month, the board is taking action on the audit report, and those actions are potentially taking action, and those actions reflect the work of the tax and the board and the department over the last couple of years. Just to give folks a sense of the potential schedule, everything's determined on board vote, so this is the potential schedule. We have a quick overview today from me, and then Sean Smith is going to come up and talk about bonus points. The board will potentially vote to keep or eliminate bonus points from the system, potentially advising the technical advisory committees to roll the current elements within them into the system. Tomorrow at the retreat, the bulk of the retreat will be focused on cut score setting discussion for proficiency and growth, since those are the two biggest and most important indicators in the system. The board won't vote tomorrow. The board will talk, marinate, discuss, and then the board will have a chance to think, and then we'll potentially vote in September to establish cut scores. And then in September, we'll talk about the remaining indicators, and then the board will have a chance to vote at a later meeting, potentially October. And that would leave October, December for if the weights, if the board wanted to visit that discussion as well. But it's a really ambitious calendar that came from all the work that's been going on for the last couple of years, and is exciting because by the end of this calendar year, the board potentially will have voted to affect some key changes to the system. So what happens after that is Sean Smith, again, and I cannot thank him enough, him and his team, for all of their incredible work. Sean and his team will build the business rules for the 26-27 letter grades and present them to the board in December or January, probably January. That will cement those decisions, and by board vote, kind of an extra layer. And then all the way in October, so between December, January, and October, the department and the board will help the field with understanding these changes, help the field with understanding the impact of these changes. And then in October of 27, the board will go through its typical letter grade release process, but this time under the potentially new revisions, and this time for the first time with indicator letter grades. So there will be a summative letter grade given to each school and letter grades for each of the indicators, proficiency, growth, and so on. And then, as always, the technical advisory committees, the board, staff, and the department will use a continuous improvement cycle to review data as it comes in, look at the impact of these changes, bring that back to the board for discussion, with the board having the ability to make revisions over time as they see fit. All right, well, that was 3 years of work in a short amount of time. But I'm happy to take any questions. We just wanted to do a table set of sort of where this started and where we are now.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Executive Director Ross. I know it's been a lot of work for our staff, for ADE, for the tax. I know that members of the board have been very engaged and very curious about just attending the different study sessions. So with that, members of the board, does anybody have any questions or comments or points of clarification? Okay, well, in that case, your work is done. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. With that, this is not necessarily this isn't a voting item, just a summary of action. So I just, again, really appreciate it. I think we received a number of letters and comments from the public, and I know there's lots of opinions, but our hope is really to provide clarity to the A through F letter system and really make sure that not only our educators and administrators understand where their students are, but that families have accurate and clear information. And so that is really our main goal. So with that, any other comments? In which case, we'll move on to item 4D. No? Awesome. Well, thanks again. And moving on to item 4D, as in David, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Now that we've done a quick review of the process thus far, the board will receive a presentation from Sean Smith, the Chief Accountability Officer at the Arizona Department of Education, on bonus points and on the potential to remove bonus points from the system. Sean?
Oh, thanks. All right. Oh, I might need your help with the slideshow. Jessica did all these amazing visuals. They're interactive. They can answer questions. I shared it all as a PDF, so it all went away. But she does have them available if we need to refer to anything for questions. So taking a look at bonus points, we'll go ahead and go to that first slide on the intent. There we go. So when bonus points, as Sean Ross just mentioned, were first introduced, they were designed to accomplish a few different goals, right? So some of them were designed to pilot individual metrics that might work their way into the system. So AZSI is a good example. There was a few years where that was being implemented. We were transitioning away from AIMS Science. And so it got put in the system as kind of a participation initially to make sure that the numbers are coming out correctly and we could adjust to that. And then it was implemented as a earning points for performance on that test. And then the idea was potentially to look at it as part of proficiency indicator. Another focus was to meet some of the statutory requirements in the A through F law, right? So the statute specifies that the indicators should be a measure of school quality. They should show the impact of a school. They should account for the distribution of pupil achievement at each school. And we have to test at least 95% of students. So that the last one's really clear there. We've got a 95% ACT Aspire participation thing. That's a test that's not tied into federal accountability. So we built it into the state system there. And then the other two, I'll spend a little more time on those. The original design was, when we have this summative system that we have, it functions in the research as what's called a compensatory system, right? So you put everything together into one whole grade. You have to have the indicators function kind of cooperatively or independently on each other. And if you've got one that's performing this way, then you put another one in to perform this way. The bonus points, several of those bonus points, so like subgroup graduation rate improvement and alternative, students with disabilities enrollment, these were designed to, when the rest of the system was getting kind of out of tune and not measuring school impact or tied closely to non-school factors, the intent was to balance that out and kind of retune it to school impacts. Now, as we've mentioned, we've looked at, they're not necessarily meeting that intent very well. And as we're breaking the system apart into indicator scoring, the compensatory nature of the indicators causes problems when they need to stand alone and perform. You can't just have rogue indicators behaving badly when we're reporting on each indicator. So it's a good time to look at how the bonus points function and what it might look like if we remove them again. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, this is one of Jessica's cool visuals. Oh, there it goes. All right. So this is one of our favorite charts, the little spaghetti chart that shows the difference where everybody starts on the left is the current allocation of grades, and where it shows on the right. And we've got this as a standalone thing if we need to pull it up and look at it more closely as well. The details of it are not super important, but what you can kind of see is if you move away to the right where bonus points are removed, you can see at the bottom edge of each grade band a number of schools that fall away, And this is what the Auditor General cited. It's roughly 10% across the board of schools that kind of go down from one grade to the next. So, and then Jessica's got them. You can see a similar pattern on the next slides for each of the models. So see the same thing in 912. It's a little bit bigger in 912. You can see that distribution of A's is much larger in 912. So we have a significant chunk going away. And then for alternative as well, same pattern across all the models. If we remove bonus points, we see some schools falling down to a lower letter grade. And then we'll go ahead and go. Okay. So this slide illustrates what Sean had mentioned a little bit ago. One of the problems with bonus points, and again, when they all just kind of come together for their own grade, it's less problematic. They're designed to kind of interplay back and forth. But what you can see is the way points are earned across the different points, who earns what. It's really kind of haphazard across schools. It's problematic from one sense of there's these kind of differing expectations as far as, you know, does 1 point in science, does that equate to the same level of effort as 1 point in 95% Aspire tested? So these different levels of expectations to earn a point, you know, 1 point here, how does that translate to earning a point in growth, a point in proficiency? So they perform very differently. And the other problem is, in our current model, each of the grade bands is a different width. So earning 5 points in 912 might mean something very different in terms of how much it moves your grade versus K8 or alternative, right? So the impact of these points, it varies widely across schools. It causes some real problems, even in the summative system. And those would probably be complicated and exacerbated as we move to an indicator scoring system. And then we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And again, thank you to Jessica for putting all these visuals together. This slide shows the effect on grades. And again, what you can see, we can dig into the details if it's helpful, but at a glance, you can kind of see the charts are going all over the place. There's not a uniform allocation. They pop up in some places. Some have a big impact on grades. Some have almost no impact on grades. And it varies across models how much. And you can see in places where K8's having 12, 13% impact, schools or their grade is changing based on that bonus point. So again, some of this widely different application across schools can end up being a real problem as we move to indicator scoring. Okay. Again, same picture, different story. This is a third way of looking at that same phenomenon of these are the types of indicator, or excuse me, bonus points that schools are earning. And again, what you see is very different distributions and different, you know, some bonus points you get a lot, some almost nobody gets them, which creates a really problematic standard when you're kind of trying to deal with those. All right. So, and then the final point, again, a lot of this driven by some of the recommendations that are coming up, both from the Auditor General report and from the technical advisory committees. So the Auditor General in their report, they cited that the availability of bonus points was inflating the grades. We probably took a little bit different view of it in the work and the data analysis than the main problem just being inflation. So much that, or rather, we looked at some of the problems that it was causing in terms of inconsistency. And really, if we ground ourselves in the research talks about effective accountability systems being accountability systems that provide good information. When the indicators and the bonus points provide such disparities in information and they mix into everything else, it becomes really hard for schools to know where they're improving, which ones are tied to their outcomes and not. So the Alternative Technical Advisory Committee, we got two similar recommendations. The Alternative Technical Advisory Committee recommended examining ways to roll in meaningful bonus points into the system. So their primary bonus point is a measure of subgroup graduation outcomes. They wanted to look at that as its own standalone indicator. So not something that gets added on afterwards, but they felt that the information is still valuable. And you can adjust the weights of the other indicators like proficiency. In the traditional technical advisory committee, the recommendation was to look at some of the pieces and see, could they be parts of other indicators, right? Could science go into proficiency? Could we look at students with disabilities in part of acceleration readiness in a different way? So finding places inside the existing system that useful ones would fit, and then removing bonus points that were less useful as appropriate. Any other elaboration you want to do on that?
No, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Just to elaborate quickly on a bonus point, current element of the bonus points that might be removed would be something like ACT Aspire participation. Dr. Hagerman just made a hand gesture. That's perfect because ACT Aspire is being sunsetted. So the test itself is going away. So having a bonus point attached to it may not make a lot of sense. So just the considering what to keep and what to eliminate, the tax will could make recommendations to the board on that.
So President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, thank you for your time. I'm available for questions.
Do we have questions from members of the board? Dr. Clay.
Okay, almost good afternoon, Sean. Okay, could you, and I don't know if you're going to do this later, but what the ATAC had recommended as far as incorporating into existing indicators, all right, or remove as appropriate. I was looking at that information a couple of days ago. Could you explain which ones would be absorbed and which ones would be taken away?
Yeah, President Haley, Member Clay, great question. So we'd looked at, there's the science proficiency bonus point. That one made a lot of sense, and we worked with science stakeholders. That one could easily be rolled into proficiency. We looked at the students with disabilities and the enrollment at the school. That's one where it probably needs a lot of look as far as, is this doing something appropriate at this point? Member Kravickas has raised this question a lot. That's a legal requirement anyways to accept students with disabilities. Is this informing a behavior that schools have? It's kind of also the way it's measured, it's kind of redundant to the special education inclusion metric that we have within acceleration readiness. So that might be one that either needs revision, removal, or partnering with another indicator. Thanks. Yeah.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Dr. Clay, basically from a systems approach, you aren't being asked to make decisions on what stays and goes today. It would be potentially just directing the tax to then, if bonus points are eliminated, they would then immediately kick into, okay, what stays, what goes, what changes, and then we would bring those recommendations to you. We would socialize them with you, and then we would bring them to you for an eventual vote, probably by December.
Okay, so this is the decision basically, because I'm getting into my head all the different things we could absorb, and I'm asking this because the field is asking, what are they looking at and what are mute points? Like we talked about AZSI and CCRI. What do we keep? Do we keep science proficient? All these different things. So what we're doing today is just saying, go ahead and take a look at this. Or is that what we're doing right now?
I think
Or are we saying
the action for today would be whether or not the board chooses to eliminate bonus points. If we do choose to do that today, then we are going to direct the tax to do the next step, which is, do you keep science? Do you move it into proficiency? How do we address special education since you get certain bonus points? Is that part of accelerator readiness? Is it part of some other component? It's just, do we agree collectively as a board to eliminate bonus points? And if so, if that is the direction of the board, then we take the next step by directing the tax on, we want you to do X, Y, and Z, come back with a recommendation. Or if you have an issue, come back to us and we can resolve the next step.
Thank you, because there's a lot of confusion right now. So I am going to ask a lot of clarifying questions. Thank you very much.
And if I can piggyback on that, remind me if I'm incorrect here, Sean, but in the TAC meetings, just like President Haley said, universally the recommendation was to remove them as a concept. They're like, this isn't really working. So, and I think the votes were actually unanimous in both TAC meetings. And then, just as President Haley mentioned, taking them away as this concept of something that goes on additionally extra, but then exactly like you're saying, take a deep look at what provides good information, what's still worth having, and where does that belong in the system. So I think that's the immediate vote, right? Is just that conceptual, which is in line with the Auditor General and the tax.
Any other questions from members of the board? Member Katniss.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. I think I would like to know kind of the history of this a little bit, if that's okay. So, what was the original policy rationale for bonus points?
You want to jump in there?
Sure. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Katniss. Sean addressed this a bit in the presentation. The idea, there was a kind of twofold. The system had been developed and had followed what was in statute, and then new elements would emerge, and the board would want to sort of watch those elements, kind of pilot them before they incorporated them. So science proficiencies are the best example. AZ-Sci didn't exist when this system was created. All of a sudden, the legislature decides, oh, we'll test science 3 out of 3 grade levels, and the board will fold that into the system. Well, the board wanted time to collect some data, look at the data before folding it into the system writ large. So it made it a bonus point as kind of like for that example is kind of a placeholder. In some other cases, bonus points then were created to correct for maybe some perceived imbalances in the system, or created to incentivize certain behaviors in schools. The ACT Aspire is probably the best example of that. They wanted to incentivize ninth grade schools that serve ninth grade students to make sure they were taking that test. And so they created a bonus point as sort of an incentive. So there's like kind of 3 tracks to why they were created, but overall, they were created sort of externally from the system and have acted sort of externally from the system, which is why Sean was saying they tend to be sort of problematic now that the board is breaking the system up into indicators. The role they play is mathematical. Well, talking to you. I will let Sean explain the math, but the math is not mathing.
President Haley, Member Katniss, if I can add on to that, that's exactly right. And it illustrates some of what we're seeing when we're moving to indicator scoring in the first place. In the existing system where everything's carefully balanced against each other, if you introduce one new thing into that, it changes the entire nature of every other one. And that's something that we'll look at in detail tomorrow. We've looked at in our study sessions as well. When it's broken apart, and we talk a lot about the concept of standalone indicators. Right now, as Sean mentioned, anything that kind of came along after the fact, it was really hard to put in there and shift anything else around. So they kind of got added as kind of that tail on there.
Any other questions from members of the board? Okay. I think then the next step is for us to decide as a board of whether or not we want to vote to remove bonus points from the A through F accountability system. So with that, I'll state the motion and see where we go. All right, do I have a motion that the board vote to remove bonus points from the A through F school accountability system and instruct ADE and the technical advisory committees to incorporate the current elements found in bonus points into existing indicators as appropriate?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Do we ask a question before or after? Yes, Member Kravickas.
It's been stated a few times, but I just want to make sure that the as appropriate part is the part where the ATAC's going to potentially recommend that some are completely eliminated. There's not an assumption that they're all being incorporated.
That is correct. So we have a motion on the table. Dr. Hagerman made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Member Haney, seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Great. All right, with that, we're going to move on to item 5. This is a call to the public. This is a time for the public to comment on items listed in the educator discipline section of the agenda. Please note that Arizona law prohibits the board from discussing or taking legal actions on matters raised during a call to the public that are not on the current meeting agenda. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board during the 1-hour public comment period. Furthermore, speakers are not allowed to cede their time to another speaker. And personal attacks are not appropriate. And with that, Deputy Director Duplanty, have we received any requests to speak?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, yes, we have. First up is Lionel So, followed by Jesus Hernandez, followed by Ann Guptill. Lionel?
Good morning. Good morning, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board and everyone in attendance. I'm going to be reading this just to make sure I stay on track and get everything I want to say in the amount of time that I have. Thank you for your time, first of all, for allowing me to have the time to address the board regarding my certification. It's been a long 5 years that I had to wait to do this, so I appreciate the time. My name is Lionel So. I'm a husband, father, educator, community advocate, healthcare employee, United States Marine Corps veteran, OIF, OEF combat veteran as well. My life story led me to be a strong advocate and worker for my community and our youth. My 6 years in the classroom and administration were some of the most rewarding moments of my life. In the past 6 years out of education, I've had a lot of time to think about this and a lot of time to reflect on my decision to initially surrender my certificate. So I'm back here to ask you to reinstate that. I did go before the Professional Practices Advisory Committee and did have a favorable outcome in that. I'm not going to go into the details of the allegations, but they were founded untrue. I did initiate my own investigation through Detective Gonzalez, who was able to conduct the full investigation. And unfortunately, I was not given that opportunity to have that done through Arizona Department of Education, through the human resources of the school that I worked for. So I had to do that on my own, and during that time, it did take quite a while. It took several years to get that done, and so I just ask that you review the information and follow the recommendation by the Professional Practices Committee. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Jesus Hernandez, followed by Ann Guptill, followed by Aaron Roberts. Jesus?
Good morning, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board. My name is Jesus Hernandez, and I am here before you today to ask that you consider removing my case from the consent agenda to discuss granting me another hearing with an interpreter present. I have been a self-contained special education teacher at Sunnyside High School for the last 6 years. Teaching has been an important part of my life and identity for many years. I was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, and graduated from the district that I now teach in. At the beginning of the last school year, I was notified that my certification documents were in investigation. I have kept an open line of communication with our district's Human Resources Department and my principal regarding this matter since. As English as my second language, the entire PPAC process was overwhelmed me. I was confused at the prospect that I would be disciplined for charges for which I was never arraigned. Both times were the result of misunderstandings, which my partner testified to the PPAC hearing. And while I understood the matter to be serious, I did not understand my right to cancel nor the significance of the waiver of legal counsel for the hearing. In advance of this meeting, I've sent impeccable letters detailing my positive impacts I've had on students in my self-contained classroom and the larger Sunnyside community. I humbly ask you today to please pull my case from the consent agenda. Please consider giving me this matter another hearing and the opportunity to represent myself with an interpreter present. The possibility that I can lose the career that I have built has been frightening, especially because I am the primary provider for my family. A suspension of my certificate would have a significant financial and emotional impact on my family. My family has endured enough certainty over the past 2 years, losing our house to a fire, my oldest daughter being a victim of domestic violence herself. My children are close to returning to a rebuilt home, and I desperately want to give them the stability I deserve. I respectfully ask the board to recommend my case to be evaluated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Ann Guptill, followed by Aaron Roberts. Ann?
Good morning, President Haley and Arizona State Board of Education members. My name is Ann Guptill. I'm in my 5th year teaching 11th grade English at Sunnyside High School down in Tucson, and I am grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm here this morning in support of my colleague, Mr. Jesus Hernandez. I joined Sunnyside High's principal, many of our coworkers, a number of his former student athletes, and the parents of the students in his self-contained classroom in collectively asking the board to strongly consider pulling Mr. Hernandez's case from the consent agenda and granting him another hearing. Given that he did not fully understand his due process rights as an English language learner, we are asking you to grant him another hearing in which he may adequately represent himself with an interpreter present. Suspension of Mr. Hernandez would do a disservice to the students and staff at Sunnyside High, and we would lose one of our most celebrated special education professionals. Everybody on campus loves Mr. Hernandez. He exudes warmth, and his smile brightens every room he enters. I met him my first year at Sunnyside, and since then have been grateful for the seriousness with which he takes his work both in the classroom and on the baseball field. Mr. Hernandez's prioritization of his players' academics translates into student athletes who take their schoolwork seriously, which is not the case for all sports. I rarely have issues with baseball players in my classroom. In the event that I do, if I have to call Mr. Hernandez to support, he shows up, he gets those boys back on track. As this board is well aware, special education is a field for which many are not suited. Even fewer are up to the task of running a self-contained classroom for students with moderate to severe disabilities, but Mr. Hernandez is one of these people. The adaptability and commitment necessary for this type of work is so rare in our profession, and Mr. Hernandez is one of the few who possess it. He is the kind of teacher who makes me proud to be one. He is a credit to our profession, and losing him would have a negative impact on our community. Thank you.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Last up is Aaron Roberts. Aaron?
It's already on. I had to press the button. It's already okay. Hello, members of the board. My name is Aaron Roberts, and I respectfully ask you to consider the totality of my 24-year career in education before making your final decision. For 24 years, I have devoted my professional life to youth. I have worked in special education in challenging environments and with students who needed an educator who believed in them. My record demonstrates who I am as an educator more than this single circumstance. I also want to address the issue of disclosure. I was lacking clarity about the process despite the agency's suggestion. In my spring 2026 application to Higley School District, I disclosed that I had been under investigation. I also disclosed the circumstances of my 2024 termination to the school I taught at during the 25-26 school year. I was transparent about my history, and I was nevertheless given the opportunity to continue working with students. I respectfully ask the board to consider that the underlying law enforcement investigation was dismissed that I continued working through the staffing agency, and that I obtained and successfully performed additional educational assignments, I understand that the board has an obligation to protect students and uphold the integrity of the teaching profession. I share the responsibility, but protecting the student also means recognizing educators who have demonstrated over decades that they are committed to those students. I am not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for proportionality and consideration of the complete record. I currently have an amazing opportunity to continue serving students as a math resource teacher, new varsity girls head basketball coach, and athletic director. A one-year suspension would have a tremendous impact on my career, the community I now serve, and on my ability to continue doing the work I absolutely love doing. I respectfully ask the board to dismiss this matter and allow me to continue serving Arizona students. If the board believes some discipline is necessary, I please ask that you impose probation or another lesser sanction rather than a one-year suspension. Please consider the educator I've been for 24 years, the disclosure that I've made recently, and my continued dedication to helping students succeed and believe in themselves. Thank you for your time and consideration.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes this call to the public.
All right. Moving to item 7.
6.
Moving to item 6. I was looking at item 7. Okay. This is the consent agenda for enforcement actions, and we'll take them as a single motion. Are there any items for the consent agenda for enforcement actions that a board member would like to pull and discuss?
I was struck by the third-party testimony on behalf of Mr. Hernandez. I'd like to know what the charges were. So I'd like to remove that and then hear from council what the charges were.
I think that's under 7, so we can post that for.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions, or does anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda item 6? Okay, then I'd like to do a single motion. Do I have a motion to approve items 6A1 through 6A14, 6B1 and 6B2, 6C1 and 6C2, 6D1 through 6D16, 6D18 through 6D36, 6D38 through 6D40, 6E1 and 6E2, 6F1 through 6F3.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, one moment, please. We have to.
Did we pull another? Did we pull another one?
Our apologies. Our apologies, Superintendent Horn, President Haley, members of the board. Just as a reminder, ever since the rulemaking change where the board has summary action now for people who don't participate in the process, we can take action, but we don't diminish due process at all. Meaning a person can literally come to the meeting and say, hey, I didn't get a hearing. I'd like that's not the case of any of the speakers today, but I didn't get a hearing. I'd like a hearing, and we will accommodate them. And so there just are going to be every meeting. There's going to be maybe 1 or 2 items that are very suddenly pulled if a person decides to come at that last minute. And I realize change is not easy, and it's not easy to, but it in the sake of due process, we think that's
got it. So 6D15. Okay. All right. I'll reread this. 6A1 through 6A14, 6B1 and 6B2, 6C1 and 6C2, 6D1 through 6D14, 6D16, 6D18 through 6D36, 6D38 through 6D40, 6E1 and 6E2, 6F1 through 6F3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Hagerman makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Katniss, yes.
So did we pull 6B15?
These were for this. This is what member or executive director Ross just explained. There's a handful of individuals where we can expedite the process, and when individuals inform the board.
So I'm asking, is 6015 one of those?
Yes.
6015 was pulled.
Yes.
So she has asked for a hearing.
No. Let me get the details on that. Member Krivickas, I was just explaining in general why there has changed sometimes at the last minute. Okay, according to Deputy Duplanty, yes, she has. So that was why that was pulled.
All right, so we have, sorry for all the changes, everybody. Dr. Hagerman made a motion. Member Katniss second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, so we'll now move on to item 7. This is the general session for certification enforcement actions, and I'd like to take them in a single motion. Are there any items for the general session for enforcement actions that a board member would like to pull?
Yes.
Deputy one, right?
Yes.
7B3.
7B3. So, Superintendent Horn would like to pull item 7B3. Are there any other items?
I just wanted to check with staff if we are pulling 7A13.
Yes.
I'd also, well.
Any other items? Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward with the motion, and then we will discuss item 7B3, if that's okay. There's a quizzical look. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve items 7A1 through 7A12, 7A14 through 7A23, 7B1 through 7B2, and 7B4 through 7B10, and 7C1.
So moved.
Dr. Hagerman makes a motion. Do I have a second? Dr. Clay seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, moving on to item 7B3. Executive Director Ross, do you have additional information? Or
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board, we do have representation, excuse me, from the Attorney General's office to discuss questions about that case. Sierra?
Good morning, Superintendent Horn, President Haley, and members of the board. I believe the question was to the charges of unprofessional conduct. Just a brief history of this case. Mr. Hernandez was arrested at beginning in 2020 for a domestic violence incident. The arrest continued in 2023 when Mr. Hernandez was arrested for DUI. For driving with a 0.181 breath alcohol content. This led to his guilty plea for DUI. And again, in 2024, Mr. Hernandez was arrested for a domestic violence incident similar to his, he was arrested for domestic violence in 2020. Throughout the committee, during the hearing, the committee members identified that there were multiple offenses. The victim the vulnerability of the victims and illegal conduct was present as aggravating factors and no mitigating factors were identified. The committee members also noted a concern with alcohol being present in all 3 incidents of leading to Mr. Hernandez's arrest. And as such, the committee recommended a 2-year suspension with the conditions that Mr. Hernandez complete alcohol abuse counseling, therapy, or treatment, as well as domestic violence counseling, therapy, or treatment. With that, I'm available for more questions.
Are there questions from members of the board?
If there aren't any, I would ask that either the person himself or his third party respond to what we just heard.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that is allowable. So if Mr. Hernandez would like to speak on his behalf, he may.
Thank you. In both in instances in 2020 and 2024, I was never arraigned. Charges were dropped. There was nothing else that came of it at that time. I've never been a violent person. These were simply just misunderstandings between me and my spouse, in which we both had alcohol. Again, all charges were dropped, and nothing more ever came from those situations.
Did any of the charges result in a conviction?
None.
I'd like to hear from the Attorney General's office as to whether charges that don't proceed further are grounds for thank you.
I do that, explain what you're asking in Spanish. Is that all right?
Hold on a second.
Are you a certified legal interpreter? Yeah, sorry, no, it's not allowable then.
No, it's nothing.
It's not, but it's not allowed. Yeah, you have to be a certified legal interpreter. So that let's let Mr. Hernandez speak, but let's Sierra, do you want to speak to Superintendent Horn's question?
So for the 2020 arrest for criminal damage, domestic violence, and disorderly conduct, domestic violence, the Pima County Consolidated Justice Court dropped the charges. In 2023, in the Pima County Consolidated Court case for DUI, Mr. Hernandez pled guilty to 1 count of driving under the influence and was sentenced to 1 day in jail, 1 year unsupervised probation, counseling, as well as fees and fines. And in 2024, the arrest for the Pima County Consolidated Justice Court case, they dismissed, he was charged for 3 counts of disorderly conduct, and the court dismissed the charges against Mr. Hernandez.
I'm sorry, you're talking very fast. It's hard for me to catch it.
I apologize. I'll go ahead and repeat. So in 2020, Mr. Hernandez was arrested for criminal damage, domestic violence, and
that was dropped.
That was dropped.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Hernandez pled guilty to DUI, driving under the influence, and he was sentenced to 1 day in jail, 1 year unsupervised probation, and ordered to pay multiple fees and fines. The 2024 arrest, those charges were also dropped in Pima County Consolidated Justice Court.
That was where he pled guilty?
He pled guilty to DUI, but the arrests concerning the domestic violence, those charges were dropped.
My question, I'm not sure. Do you participate in the PPAC hearings?
I do. I did not participate in this particular hearing.
Okay, no, I just want to know in general, are arrests that don't result in further action considered a valid consideration on discipline matters? I just don't know the answer to that. I'd like to know.
So there's different standards of proof within the PPAC hearings versus criminal hearings. Criminal hearings move forward with, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt,
yeah.
whereas our hearings are concerned whether or not it is more likely than not, so a preponderance of the evidence, whether or not unprofessional conduct occurred. And
And did the PPAC conclude that based on preponderance of the evidence that the charges were correct?
yes, the PPAC concluded that based on the evidence presented by the state, unprofessional conduct did occur.
Member Katniss, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question with what Mr. Hernandez was asking about in terms of a translator. At PPAC hearings, are translators available? Are they allowed to be provided?
This is Assistant Attorney General Joseph Queta. Yes, Member Katniss, a person can request an interpreter if needed. In fact, we just had a hearing last month with a Turkish interpreter, so that is available.
I will say, as the person who raised it, I think Mr. Hernandez speaks English very well.
The member Katniss, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, just to reinforce what Mr. Queta was saying, they are available on request, so they have to be requested by the educator, and are often and are given. We have ASL interpreters. We have, like you said, Turkish. We've had quite a few cases.
Did Mr. Hernandez request one?
Garnett, no.
I did not. I was unaware of the whole process with the PPAC. Everything was overwhelming and kind of came up like pretty quickly, so I wasn't really sure what the process was going to be. So I didn't know.
Let me say that based on Sean, let me say based on what I've heard, I'm satisfied that PPAC should be affirmed.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Just to remind the board, you do have a few options with respect to any case that comes before you from the Professional Practices Advisory Committee. You can accept, modify, or reject any of the conclusions made by the PPAC. There are standards set forth in the board's rules to give guidance on something that might be a basis for rejecting or modifying a finding. Those are in Administrative Code R7-2-709. A respondent also has the opportunity to seek a rehearing or the board's review after the board has acted. So the board, if the board issues a final decision today that is adverse to the respondent does have recourse by way of a motion for rehearing to you, the board, that you would then consider, with which he could state any basis for why he believes that your decision should be reversed. Today, the board's task is just simply to determine whether to accept, modify, or reject any findings of fact, conclusions of law, or the ultimate recommendation made by the committee. And if the board has any further questions on procedure, I stand ready.
Well, as a person who raised the question, I'm prepared to move that we accept PPAC.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, then Member Katniss.
I'm sorry, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, President Haley, if you could just state the motion just to clearly state that.
I will as soon as the questions are answered. I think Member Catanese had another question.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I wasn't sure if there was a motion on the
I'll state the motion and then one of the members will either move to accept or second, et cetera. But Member Catanese, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm thinking, have we ever sent something back to the PPAC for a translation issue? If someone really needed an interpreter, I guess is my question.
I'm calling forward Director of Enforcement Action, Garnett Burns.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Catanese, the answer is no. We have not. Any other question?
Okay. Then the motion on the table is, do I have a motion to approve the item 7B3?
So move.
You have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Dr. Clay seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are now moving on to item 8. And with that, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, thank you for a productive meeting. It was so much fun. Let's do it again tomorrow. So we, as you all know, tomorrow is the board's retreat. A little bit of a misnomer because we'll be right back here at the boardroom. But tomorrow, 9 o'clock. And we're excited to see everybody. Very thankful, as always, for your time. And then just as a reminder for those watching, the next official board meeting is September 28th, but we do have the retreat tomorrow.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Sorry, it's about a general theme I've seen in a lot of the cases that we're on today, but I didn't want to actually pull any to raise it. So I apologize for doing it this way. I hope that's appropriate. But there was a general theme in a handful of cases of seclusion and restraint cases. We've seen them over time, but this month really stood out for a lot of reasons. And I just say we have to think about that when we're thinking about teacher prep and behavior management, seclusion and restraint. I get calls on this all the time. And some of the cases this month were pretty horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to remind, and it's a question more for ADE, under state law, I believe any reported incident of seclusion and restraint, parents are supposed to be notified within 24 hours. And so I think this is a question for ADE, for ESS monitoring and compliance. I mean, we saw the case where a handful of kids were secluded and restrained every day for almost an entire year. I doubt those parents were notified, but this is a critical part of that legislation that parents fought for about 10 years ago, is for the least for parents to be notified that this is happening. And I'm guessing it's not. So I guess my question for ADE then is there follow-up on these cases that we can do to make sure that notification requirements are happening?
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, I'll reach out to the ADE ESS team today.
And with that, our meeting concludes at, I think, 12:30. Thank you, everybody.
And I don't know if she's still here, but